Close your eyes, and let us travel to First Age Beleriand, beneath Morgoth's shadow. In the First Age, beneath the dark northern skies of Beleriand, the mortal wanderer Beren entered the hidden realm of Doriath and saw Lúthien dancing beside the Escalduin. Their meeting began a journey from the quiet forests of Thingol's kingdom to the iron gates of Angband, where they would seek a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. At the northern edge of Dorthonion, before dawn in the First Age of Arda, you stand among pines silvered by frost. The cold wind moves over the ash-grey heights, carrying the faint smells of charred pine, wet stone, and abandoned fires. Beneath the dark branches, old paths have disappeared under fallen needles and pale ash. No human voice rises from the valleys now. The camps are empty. Their stones remain, blackened and patient, beside the places where men once slept. Far below, the land descends towards Beleriand, where rivers pass through forests and armies move beneath banners. Behind you lies the ruined country of your fathers. Before you stretches a road without shelter. Morning light gathers slowly along the ridges, touching broken spear shafts, torn leather and grey tree trunks. You feel the weight of the silence, and beneath it, the faint breathing of the wind. You are Beren, a mortal man of the House of Bear, born in Dorthonion, north of Beleriand. Your father is Barahir, lord of the surviving outlaws who remain in these mountains after the land falls beneath Morgoth's power. Your mother is Imeldia, remembered among men for leading women and children away from danger when Dorthonion falls. The story belongs to the First Age of Arda, the ancient period later chronicled in the Silmarillion, when elves, men, and dark powers contend beneath skies not yet burdened by later ages. You have inherited no peaceful estate, no guarded hall, and no settled border. You inherit a name, a wilderness, and the memory of a people driven from their homes. The House of Bear has endured through courage, but courage does not make the hills gentle. Before your wandering begins, the dagger Bragalach breaks across the northern lands. It is called the Battle of Sudden Flame because Morgoth's fire pours from Angband and runs over the plains with little time for warning. The mountains glow in the distance, and smoke gathers above the passes. Dorthonion, once green beneath its pines, becomes a country of ash, embers, and shattered watchposts. Morgoth's forces conquer the land, driving its defenders from the open country and sealing the fate of many who cannot flee. The sound of battle reaches the forest valleys as deep, rolling thunder. Horses stumble through smoke. Men carry the wounded beneath trees whose branches burn overhead. In the ravines, rain falls upon hot stones and rises again as steam. The old country of your birth is changed before you can say farewell. Around the ruined camps, the forest holds the warmth of yesterday's flames. Wet stones shine beside the paths, and black pine needles cling to the leather of abandoned shields. A thin mist rests among the roots, gathering in hollows where frightened feet have trampled the ground. The cold wind crosses the heights without meeting a wall or roof. It enters every torn cloak and moves along every exposed hand. Somewhere beneath the slope, water drips steadily from a shelf of rock. The sound is small, yet it continues through the silence. Charred branches settle with quiet cracks. Birds have withdrawn from the nearest trees, leaving only an occasional wingbeat far beyond the smoke. In the grey distance, the mountains stand like sealed doors. Dorthonion remains behind you, and the road south waits among the darkened trunks. Yet Barahir and his companions do not leave the wild after the battle. They remain in Dorthonion, concealed among ravines and forests, living as outlaws beneath the eyes of Morgoth's servants. Barahir has saved the life of Finrod Felagund during the dagger Bragalach, when the elven lord is hard-pressed and surrounded by enemies. In gratitude, Finrod gives Barahir a ring as a token of friendship and future aid. The ring passes into the memory of the family, bright against the darkness of those years. It carries a promise that reaches beyond one battle, one valley, and one lifetime. Barahir's company becomes small, watchful, and stern. You grow among men who sleep lightly, speak softly, and know every hidden stream. Their refuge is not safety, but distance from the roads where Morgoth's soldiers search. Imeldia's road leads away from the flames. She gathers the women and children of Dorthonion and guides them from danger, carrying what can be carried and leaving behind what cannot. The path bends through cold gullies and narrow woodland, while smoke dims the sun above the branches. You remember her not as someone who escapes fear, but as someone who walks through it with a steady face. Her name remains attached to that passage, when the living are led from the falling country towards safer lands. Behind her, the pines burn and the valleys empty. Ahead, Beleriand receives the displaced, though it cannot restore what has been lost. The House of Bear becomes scattered among strangers, while Barahir stays behind with his companions. The family divides beneath the pressure of war, each part carrying the same grief in a different direction. In the ravines where Barahir hides, the days become measured by small signs. A broken twig may reveal a passing scout. A patch of frost may show where a boot has rested. Smoke must be concealed, and voices must remain beneath the level of the wind. The outlaws gather roots, berries, and whatever game the forest allows. Their cloaks absorb the smell of damp earth. Their knives remain close to hand. At night, the men sit close to the rocks, listening to rain slide from the branches. You learn the shape of hunger, the patience of waiting, and the quiet loyalty that binds companions who have no home except the wilderness. Far away, Finrod's ring remains with Barahir, a small circle of brightness in a land where every promise is tested. Morgoth's servants eventually betray Barahir's outlaw company. The company is discovered through treachery, and the secret places of Dorthonion offer no protection against enemies who know where to look. One by one, Barahir's companions die beneath the weapons of Angband's servants. Barahir himself is killed, and with him falls the last shelter of your childhood. The quiet camps become scenes of blood and scattered gear. A fire burns without anyone seated beside it. The wind moves through the place where men once whispered together. You survive the deaths of your father and his companions, but survival gives you no comfort at first. It leaves you alone among the stones, carrying grief that has nowhere to settle. Barahir's name remains, as does the ring given by Finrod, though your father does not. Night settles upon the heights with a depth that seems almost physical. Clouds cover the stars, and rain darkens the ash upon the ground. The smell of wet charcoal rises from the camps. Under a leaning pine, you find a strip of torn cloth caught upon a branch, moving gently whenever the wind passes. You do not touch it. Nearby, water gathers in a shallow hollow and reflects the faintest grey from the hidden sky. The forest makes no promise of protection. It simply stands around you, rooted and silent. In the distance, a night bird calls once, then waits. No answer comes. Your father's name moves through your thoughts like a low voice beneath sleep. You turn south before dawn, leaving Dorthonion behind. You become a solitary wanderer in the lands north of Doriath. Your road passes through war-darkened Beleriand, across slopes where grass has been scorched, and through valleys where abandoned armor rusts beneath the rain. Sometimes you travel beneath open sky, with the cold wind pressing against your face. Sometimes you hide beneath beech roots while distant riders pass along the northern tracks. You carry little, because every object becomes heavy when the road has no end. Your memories travel more easily than provisions. You remember Barahir's voice, Imeldia's steady departure, and the ring that Finrod placed in your father's hand. You remember Dorthonion before the flames, and you remember it afterwards. Between those memories, the years widen, and the road continues southwards towards the hidden woodland realm of Doriath. The land changes gradually as you approach the borders of Doriath. The air grows softer beneath thicker trees, though the season remains cool. Moss covers fallen trunks, and pale mushrooms gather around the roots. The ground drinks the rain instead of reflecting it in blackened pools. You hear streams before you see them, moving beneath tangled fern and low branches. Still, the war has left its marks. Spears lie broken among the bracken. A helmet rests upside down beside a stone. The silence here is not the emptiness of the northern camps. It is deeper, watchful, and held together by something unseen. You walk beneath branches woven above your head, while the last open spaces disappear behind you. Doriath is near, although no road announces its boundary. Doriath is the hidden woodland realm ruled by Thingol and Melian. Thingol is an elven king, ancient and powerful, while Melian is a mayor whose presence gives the kingdom a beauty and strength unlike any other land around it. Around Doriath lies the girdle of Melian, protecting the realm from ordinary passage and turning strangers aside through confusion, weariness, or unseen resistance. You do not cross a simple boundary marked by stones. You enter a region where paths alter beneath the trees and familiar directions lose their meaning. The forest closes around the exhausted wanderer. Branches bend across your way. The light dims, although the day remains bright. You pass the same pale rock more than once, then find it standing somewhere you cannot explain. The girdle surrounds Doriath, and Doriath gathers you within its guarded silence. Leaves brush your shoulders as you move deeper among the trees. The smell of wet bark replaces the sharper scent of ash. Silver water moves beneath beech and oak, slipping over pebbles with a sound as delicate as glass. The river Escalduin is somewhere ahead, unseen behind banks of fern and dark moss. Night birds call through the leaves, their notes falling slowly into the spaces between branches. Your boots press into soft earth, then onto roots polished by rain. A faint brightness lingers beneath the canopy, reflected from water or moonlight, or perhaps both. You begin to lose your sense of distance. The forest seems to breathe around you, opening and closing with each quiet movement of air. Doriath is no longer merely a name. It is the coolness on your face and the hush beneath your feet. Then, beneath the moon, you see a glade beside the forest river Escalduin. The clearing lies among beech and oak, with soft grass spread beneath the silver branches. In the center, Lúthien is dancing. Her movement is light enough to seem part of the wind, yet each turn carries a grace that holds your gaze. She is the daughter of Thingol, the elven king, and Melian, the mayor who protects Doriath. The dark hair around her shoulders catches the moonlight as she passes between shadows. Her voice rises with the night birds, and the river answers from beyond the trees. You stand at the edge of the glade, too weary to speak and too astonished to move. After the long ash-grey heights, the ruined country, and the lonely road, the sight appears almost impossible. The moon rests upon the leaves in pale fragments. Escalduin moves below the bank, its surface broken by stones and trailing branches. The grass bends beneath Lúthien's feet and springs back after each step. Small flowers gleam between the blades, carrying a cool scent that mingles with wet bark. A night bird calls from the upper branches, and another answers from the opposite side of the river. You hear the soft movement of cloth, the low turning water, and the faint rhythm of a song whose every word you do not understand. Your hands remain still at your sides. The cold air has not left the forest, yet the glade feels warmer than the road. Light gathers around Lúthien, not sharply, but like moonlight resting upon a quiet pond. You call Lúthien to Newville, meaning nightingale. The name comes to you suddenly, shaped by wonder and the music of the clearing. It moves into the night and seems to belong there. Lúthien turns towards the sound, and for one moment her eyes meet yours across the soft grass. You are a mortal man, carrying the wounds and weariness of a brief life. She is an elven woman, daughter of Thingol and Melian, belonging to a people whose memories reach backwards beyond your knowledge. Between you lies the difference between mortal and elven life, between the fading years of men and the long endurance of the Eldar. Yet the name Tinuville passes from your lips, and something changes. Lúthien hears it. The wanderer is no longer moving only away from death. You remain beside the glade after Lúthien vanishes into the trees. Her footsteps make almost no sound, and the branches close softly behind her. The river continues its patient movement beneath the oaks. Moonlight settles upon the place where she stood, brightening the grass and the small flowers bent beneath her feet. You hear her song once more, farther away now, rising and falling between the trunks. The sound becomes thinner with distance, yet it does not disappear from your thoughts. The name Tinuvil remains with you. You follow the memory of her song through Doriath, although the girdle of Melian has already made every path uncertain. Your hunger, your grief, and the long road still surround you. Beneath them all, another road begins to form. The days that follow carry you deeper into the hidden realm. You move beside Esgilduin, crossing where the water shallows and pausing beneath branches heavy with rain. At times, you glimpse pale figures between the trunks, silent guardians watching the stranger who has crossed the guarded border. Their bows remain lowered, but their attention never leaves you. You do not know how long you walk. The forest gives no clear measure of morning or afternoon. Sometimes the sun appears as a dim circle above the leaves. Sometimes the moon follows you through the branches. The memory of Lúthien remains sharper than the memory of food. You carry the sound of Tinuvil's song through every quiet passage, and the name returns whenever the river turns beneath the trees. The woodland air lies cool against your skin. Damp leaves soften each step, while exposed roots rise like low ridges from the earth. A beech trunk, pale and smooth, holds a patch of green moss where the rain has gathered. Oak leaves turn slowly in the current of Esgilduin, circling once before drifting beneath a shadowed bank. From somewhere above, a night bird gives a low, questioning call. The answer comes later, faint and distant. You rest your hand against the rough bark of a tree and feel the steadiness of its living weight. Around you, Doriath remains hidden from the wider war. The forest does not forget the north, but it does not speak of it. Water, leaves, and breathing wind fill the spaces where fear once stood. At last, the guardians of Doriath bring you before the court of Thingol. You are led through paths that seem to open only for those who know them. The trees draw back, and the hidden halls of the kingdom appear beneath stone and living wood. Their lamps cast a soft light upon pillars, carved doors, and polished floors. Thingol sits in majesty, an elven king whose presence makes the room seem larger and older. Melian is near him, and around them stand the people of Doriath, watching the mortal wanderer who has come from the northern wilderness. You carry no army, no wealth, and no message from a friendly court. You bring only the name of Barahir, the memory of Dorthonion, and the strange new name of Tinuvil. Somewhere beyond the halls, Lúthien is present in the kingdom that protects her. The halls are warmer than the forest, though the scent of leaves enters through open arches. Firelight rests upon grey stone and turns the edges of woven cloth to gold. Water runs through channels cut into the floor, its sound quiet beneath the voices of the court. The air carries the fragrance of cedar, rain, and distant flowers. You stand upon smooth stone while the guardians remain behind you. Their presence is calm, yet the room is not careless. Beyond the doors, the girdle of Melian surrounds Doriath like an unseen wall. Within it, the world seems held apart from the wounds of war. You can still feel the road in your limbs. You can still smell wet ash in your cloak. Beneath the roof of Thingol's realm, however, the first shelter of your wandering gathers around you. Thingol hears the account of your birth and your father's fate. The name Barahir is not unknown to him, and the friendship between Barahir and Finrod carries weight among the elves. You speak of Dorthonion, of the dagger Bragalach, and of the battle of sudden flame that conquered the land. You speak of Barahir's companions remaining in the wild after the battle. You speak of their betrayal, their deaths, and your own survival among the ruins. The court grows quiet as the story passes through it. Then the memory of Lúthien enters your words, and the name Tinuviel sounds different within the halls than it did beside Esgilduin. It is no longer only a name born from sudden wonder. It has become the beginning of a legend. Lúthien's presence changes the shape of your story. Before the glade, your path leads away from Dorthonion, away from Barahir, and away from every place where the past has been destroyed. After the glade, the road gathers a direction. You are no longer merely a survivor crossing war-darkened Beleriand. You are a man who has seen something beautiful and cannot return to the emptiness that came before it. Lúthien and Beren fall in love despite the difference between mortal and elven life. Their love does not erase the distance between your kindreds. It makes that distance visible, like a dark ridge beneath the moon. Doriath becomes a refuge from the northern wilderness, but it also becomes a threshold. Beyond it waits a road more dangerous than any you have yet walked. Outside the halls, rain has begun to fall. It touches the leaves with a soft, even sound. Esgilduin swells beneath the oaks, carrying silver threads of reflected light between the banks. The glade remains somewhere within the woodland, quiet beneath the night. Soft grass holds the memory of passing feet. A few flowers have closed their petals against the damp air. The trunks of the beech trees stand pale through the darkness, while the older oaks gather shadow beneath their branches. Night birds call through the leaves, slow and separated by long intervals. You hear one note near the river, then another beyond the hall. The kingdom of Doriath rests behind the girdle of Melian. Its waters move, its trees endure, the rain continues. For a little while you remain within the hidden kingdom of Thingol and Melian. The court knows you as Beren, son of Barahir, a mortal man of the house of Bear. The forest knows you as the wanderer who came from Dorthonion. Lúthien knows you through the name Tinuviel, the nightingale, which you spoke beside Esgilduin. These names travel quietly through Doriath, repeated in halls, paths, and guarded clearings. The ring given by Finrod to Barahir remains part of your inheritance, though its meaning has not yet unfolded. Your father's death still lies behind you. The future lies ahead, veiled by the love that has begun between mortal and elf. The hidden kingdom shelters you, but shelter cannot last forever. The fire burns low in the halls of Doriath. Its embers glow beneath a layer of ash, red and quiet. Beyond the open arches, the forest is dark with rain. Water passes beneath beech and oak, carrying faint reflections of the lamps. The stones beneath your feet have been worn smooth by many years and many steps. You hear cloth moving gently as someone crosses the distant chamber. You hear the river beyond the walls. You hear a bird settling among wet leaves. The sounds grow farther apart. Your thoughts grow slower. Barahir, Dorthonion, Esgilduin, Tinuviel. The names remain warm and dim like coals beneath the ash. The road has not ended. It has only become quieter. Doriath closes around you with its trees and water. The girdle of Melian holds the outer world at a distance. Rain darkens the grass. Moonlight fades beneath the leaves. Somewhere in the woodland, Lúthien's song has become a memory, and that memory rests gently beside you. You are Beren, still mortal, still weary, still carrying the north within your heart. But the wandering has changed. A refuge lies beneath the trees. A threshold waits beyond the quiet halls. For now, there is only soft earth underfoot, silver water in the darkness, and the slow breathing of the forest. The forest receives you beneath its darkened canopy, and the path descends towards Doriath, where the hidden kingdom rests beyond the reach of ordinary roads. You are Beren, carrying the memory of Lúthien through rain and shadow, while the trees close softly around your passing. In those days, Lúthien was the only child of Thingol and Melian, born into a house where elven majesty met the ancient wisdom of the Maiar. Her father was also called Ilu Thingol, and among the elves he had been one of the great leaders, tall in renown and difficult to approach. Her mother's power helped preserve Doriath from the wars beyond its borders, surrounding the woodland realm with a guarded peace. Now, beneath that protection, Lúthien's name has become inseparable from yours. Moonlight is caught in the branches above you, appearing in broken pieces between the leaves. The rain has settled into the moss, and every stone along the path carries a dark, polished gleam. Ferns lean over the narrow track, their fronds trembling whenever the night wind passes through. Somewhere behind the trunks, water moves over a shallow bed, making a sound too soft to distinguish from breathing. The coolness enters your clothes and rests upon your shoulders, though the forest offers a shelter deeper than any roof. Around you, the rustle of leaves follows a traveler moving at night, sometimes near enough to seem like a companion, then distant again. No bird calls from the upper branches, yet the silence is not empty, because the woodland keeps its own low music beneath the stars. Within Menegroth, news of your arrival travels through chambers cut from living stone, carried by servants who speak in subdued voices. The king hears that his daughter loves a man, and the knowledge enters his mind like an unwelcome blade. Thingol has watched many seasons pass beneath the beech trees, and he knows the grief that follows those who belong to the race of men. You are mortal, subject to the human fate of death, while Lúthien is elven and normally belongs to the immortal life of Arda. Between the second-born and the firstborn lies a boundary measured not only in years, but also in the final destinies of the two peoples. Thingol therefore receives the tale with suspicion, imagining a stranger who has entered Doriath and disturbed the order of his house. Yet you do not abandon Lúthien, and your feet carry you towards the king. Menegroth is cool beneath the earth, with long halls opening between carved stone chambers. Torch smoke rises through the pillars and gathers in thin grey veils beneath the vaulted ceiling. The flames touch the walls unevenly, bringing out images of trees, flowers, beasts, and wandering stars. Their light rests upon the polished floor, where the reflected fire seems to move beneath the stone like a slow underground river. Beyond the torches, darkness occupies the spaces between columns, and the hidden corners retain the chill of deep caverns. A faint scent of damp earth mingles with resin, old wood, and the mineral fragrance of walls that have never seen the open sky. The air is still around you, though the murmur of distant footsteps travels gently through the halls. You enter before Thingol, and the king's voice echoes beneath the underground pillars as he questions your purpose. His words carry the weight of a ruler who has guarded Doriath through long years, while Melian watches from beside him with a calm that reaches beyond ordinary sight. You speak of Lúthien without disguising the truth, and your courage becomes clear because you stand before the father who could command your death. Thingol asks how a mortal stranger has come to claim the affection of his daughter, whose lineage joins the ancient elves to the power of the Mayor. Lúthien's name is associated with flowers and song in Tolkien's invented languages, and such meanings seem to gather around her even in this stern chamber. Your answer gives no promise of safety, only the quiet certainty that love has already altered your path. The carved pillars rise like trunks within an underground forest, each one bearing patterns that torchlight cannot fully reveal. Above your head, soot drifts slowly towards unseen vents, thinning as it climbs into the darkness. The stone beneath your feet feels cold through your worn boots, and the faint dampness of Menegroth clings to the hems of your clothing. Along the walls, sculpted leaves curl around archways, their surfaces smooth beneath countless years of careful hands. The torches hiss now and then, sending a brief tremor through the shadows. Across the great hall, the king's seat remains brighter than the surrounding floor, while the spaces behind it fade into quiet blackness. Every sound becomes enlarged beneath the roof, from a small movement of cloth to the distant falling of water. Thingol does not strike you down, because the king has chosen a more impossible answer. He names a bride price for Lúthien, expecting the demand to become a death sentence beneath the appearance of a bargain. You must bring him one Silmaril taken from Morgoth's iron crown, and only then may you ask for the hand of his daughter. The Silmarils are 3 jewels made by Fëanor during the years of the trees, before the First Age began, and each contains the light of the 2 trees of Valinor. Morgoth stole them after destroying the 2 trees, setting the jewels within his crown as symbols of possession and defiance. Thingol believes that no living traveller could approach Angband, recover 1 radiant stone, and return from the fortress of the enemy. His demand is therefore not a simple price, but a wall raised between mortal courage and royal authority. The name of Morgoth seems to darken the air, although the torches continue burning along the walls. Smoke climbs in narrow threads and bends beneath the pressure of unseen currents. The pillars hold the warmth close to their bases, while the upper chambers remain touched by a colder breath. Somewhere beyond the hall, a door closes with a muted wooden sound, and the echo travels through many groth before fading. The carved flowers beside the king's seat appear pale in the uneven light, their stone petals catching a dull glimmer. On the floor, a thin line of water has gathered between the slabs, reflecting a broken red flame. Nothing moves quickly in the deep halls, and even the shifting shadows seem governed by the slow patience of the earth. You receive the task as a pledge rather than a punishment, and your answer leaves no space for Thingol to mistake your intention. The king expects despair, yet you speak as one who has already crossed the worst distance by presenting yourself before him. Lúthien hears the words, and the future opens before her like a road hidden beneath snow. She does not accept her father's decision as the end of the matter, because the Silmaril has become more than an impossible condition. It has become the measure of your devotion, drawing the private life of 2 people into the history of Beleriand. Thingol thinks he has sealed the matter with iron, but the demand begins to move through the world like a seed carried by wind. You turn towards Angband, and Lúthien remains within Doriath. Many groth settles into night beneath the roots of the forest, though no ordinary darkness enters its guarded chambers. Torchlight trembles along the carved stone, and the smoke leaves a bitter trace upon the cool air. The underground streams whisper behind the walls, hidden channels running through the foundations of the kingdom. From a distant passage comes the soft scrape of sandals, followed by stillness. The great pillars appear almost alive when the flames pass over their engraved branches, as though an ancient woodland has been preserved beneath the ground. Outside, moonlight rests upon the leaves of Doriath, but here the light is made by fire, amber and unsteady. You can feel the difference between the sheltered halls and the open forest, between protection held by Melian's power and danger waiting beyond the borders. Lúthien is confined within Doriath while you set out, and the guarded halls become a beautiful prison around her. Thingol believes that distance will weaken the bond between you, while Melian understands that affection cannot be measured by the strength of doors. The queen knows that her daughter carries both elven ancestry and the heritage of the Mayor, and that the hidden power of her nature cannot be governed entirely by locks. She warns Thingol that his decision has reached beyond ordinary royal authority, though she does not raise her voice or accuse him openly. A king may command roads, gates, and armed guardians, yet even Thingol cannot command the fate that has begun moving through Beleriand. Lúthien listens, remembers your face, and waits beneath the moonlit branches. In the chambers where Lúthien rests, the air is softened by hanging fabrics and the fragrance of crushed leaves. Pale lamps burn in shallow bowls, their light spreading across woven patterns that resemble rivers and flowering vines. Beyond the windows, the forest remains close, with branches brushing the stone openings whenever the wind bends them. Moonlight enters through the leaves and lies across the floor in narrow silver shapes. The curtains shift without haste, making a whisper like grass turning under gentle rain. Far below, a spring moves beneath the halls, and its hidden rhythm rises through the quiet rooms. The walls are warm in places where the torches have burned for many years, yet the surrounding stone keeps a coolness that belongs to the deep earth. Your road leads away from the guarded heart of Doriath, carrying you towards lands where Melion's protection grows thinner. Behind you, Lúthien remains among her people, and before you lies the darkness of Morgoth's realm. The name Tinuviel belongs to her as an affectionate name connected with the nightingale, and the memory of that name follows you through the night. You have heard her called Lúthien, and you have heard her called Tinuviel, yet neither name seems large enough for the sorrow and courage gathering around her. The Silmaril waits within an iron crown, surrounded by armies and fire, while your own strength is limited by mortal flesh. Still, the pledge has been spoken before the king, and a spoken pledge can become a road that refuses to disappear. Outside the Hidden Kingdom, the weather moves across the hills in broad, quiet veils. Clouds pass over the moon, leaving the forest without its silver edges for a little while. When the light returns, it is caught in pools upon the leaves and scattered along the wet branches. The path beneath you is uneven, softened by fallen needles and darkened by the rain. Cold air moves across your face, carrying the smell of bark, mud, and distant water. A fox has crossed the track before you, leaving small marks where its paws pressed into the damp ground. Leaves rustle on either side, rising and fading, without revealing whether the sound belongs to wind or living feet. You continue northward, while Lúthien's thoughts remain turned towards the same road. Your separate journeys begin to bend towards one another, though neither traveller can yet see the meeting place. You move through the wild under the burden of the Silmaril, and she begins to consider the guarded doors as obstacles rather than boundaries. Thingol's demand has changed the shape of your love, transforming a private promise into an event that will touch princes, kingdoms, and the wars of Beleriand. The jewel that once belonged to the light of Valinor now draws a mortal and an elven princess towards the stronghold of Morgoth. You walk because you have accepted the task, while Lúthien prepares to follow because she refuses to let it separate her from you. Across the darkness, both paths are quietly turning. The forest gives no single sign of direction, yet each feature seems to hold a small instruction. A leaning birch points towards a hollow, a stream leads down from the rocks, and the moss gathers thickest upon the northern sides of the trunks. The moon has climbed beyond the highest branches, leaving the lower woodland in blue-grey shade. Drops fall from the leaves at irregular intervals, striking the ground with delicate, isolated sounds. Underfoot, roots rise like sleeping animals beneath the soil, and wet stones shift slightly when your weight touches them. The scent of pine is stronger near the ridge, while the hollows retain the earthy smell of decaying leaves. You pass beneath a fallen trunk, and its rough bark brushes your shoulder like an old wooden doorway. Within Menegroth, Lúthien's confinement grows quieter as the hours pass. No guard sees the depth of her resolve, because her stillness resembles obedience when viewed from a distance. She remembers how your voice sounded beneath the pillars, how Thingol's command entered the hall, and how the name of the Silmaril seemed to close every path. Her father has sought an impossible treasure from Morgoth's iron crown, yet the impossibility has not diminished her love. The strength inherited through Melion gives her a patience that does not need to announce itself, and her elven nature gives her a memory that does not easily release what it has cherished. Tinuviel waits until the guarded halls grow drowsy, and the nightingale begins its unseen song beyond the trees. The underground corridors hold the last warmth of the evening fires, but the stone has begun to reclaim it. Torch smoke rises through carved chambers and gathers beneath the high arches, where faint draughts carry it towards hidden openings. The scent of ash rests beside the fragrance of flowering branches brought indoors from the forest. On a polished ledge, a shallow bowl reflects the flames in wavering fragments. A guard stands at the end of a passage, his spear dark against the amber light, while another watches from beyond a carved screen. Their voices are low, and their words become indistinct before reaching the sleeping rooms. Above the halls, roots press through the roof and hold the kingdom in a living embrace, keeping Mennygroth close to the trees and close to the breathing earth. Melian speaks again to Thingol, telling him that the price he has named may carry consequences no king can restrain. She sees further into the currents of fate than the proud certainty of her husband, and she understands that Lúthien's choice has become part of a larger design. Thingol has believed that his authority could protect his daughter from grief by keeping you distant. Instead, his demand has given the lovers a road marked by peril, and peril often gathers strength from resistance. The king's voice still echoes beneath the pillars when he answers her, but the sound lacks the complete assurance it held before. Melian does not withdraw her warning because she knows that the fate of Doriath has begun to touch the fate of Beren and Lúthien. Night deepens around the hidden kingdom, and the forest beyond the gates becomes a dark sea of trunks and branches. The moon appears between clouds, touching the upper leaves before vanishing behind them. Owls move without sound from one shadowed branch to another, while small creatures disturb the wet litter beneath the ferns. The guarded entrance remains quiet, its stones shining where rain has passed over them. Beyond the walls, the air feels wider and colder, carrying traces of distant smoke from settlements far to the south. Inside the halls, the torches burn steadily, but their glow cannot reach the forest paths where you have gone. Lúthien stands near a narrow opening and feels the wind enter, bearing the scent of leaves and the faint freedom of open ground. At last, Lúthien escapes the guarded halls, leaving behind the chambers where Thingol believes her future has been secured. She moves through Mennygroth with a quiet knowledge of its passages, passing carved pillars and sleeping guards whose attention has softened beneath the late hour. Her hair falls around her like a dark stream, and the moonlight finds it whenever she reaches an opening near the forest. The name Tinuviel seems fitting in that moment, because she is both hidden and unmistakable, a nightingale passing beyond the reach of the cage. She does not leave Doriath in anger, nor does she reject her father's love, but she cannot allow his decision to become the end of your road. Her feet carry her into the woodland, following the path your footsteps have already marked. Leaves close over Lúthien as she enters the forest, and the branches release small showers of rain upon her hair. Moonlight catches in the upper canopy, breaking into pale fragments that move whenever the wind touches the boughs. The moss gives softly beneath her feet, holding the impression of each step before the dampness smooths it away. A slender stream crosses the path, its surface trembling around dark stones and fallen twigs. The air smells of wet bark, crushed fern, and the faint sweetness of flowers opening somewhere unseen. No torchlight reaches this place, so the woodland keeps only the muted colors of silver, blue, and black. Around the solitary traveler, leaves whisper against leaves, and the forest seems to carry her forward without asking where she intends to go. You have already passed beyond the familiar borders of Doriath when the night begins to thin. The first grey light enters between the trunks, revealing the marks of your journey upon the mud. Your cloak is heavy with rain, and your limbs remember every slope, stone, and fallen branch. Still, the thought of Lúthien remains warmer than the weak dawn around you. You carry the image of Mennygroth beneath the earth, the king's stern face, and the impossible brightness of the Silmaril. The jewel contains the light of the two trees, yet its path has been darkened by theft, war, and the crown of Morgoth. You walk towards that darkness, unaware that Lúthien has left the guarded halls and begun to follow through the sleeping woods. Daylight arrives slowly beneath the forest, filtering through leaves that hold the last beads of rain. The grey morning rests upon the roots and stones without dispelling the night entirely. Mist gathers above the stream, moving in pale ribbons between the trunks. Birds begin with single notes, each call separated by a long interval of listening. The ground gives off a rich smell of wet soil, while the branches release the sharper fragrance of resin when warmed by the first light. Somewhere behind you, the path narrows beneath hazel and thorn. Somewhere ahead, the woodland opens towards ridges washed in silver haze. Lúthien's passage remains almost invisible, though a broken fern and a shallow print beside the water reveal that another traveller has entered the same quiet world. Thingol wakes to discover that Lúthien has gone, and the news moves through Menegroth with a speed that quietens every conversation. The king's anger rises first, yet beneath it lies fear, because he understands the dangers beyond Doriath's guarded borders. Melion's warning returns to him with painful clarity, reminding him that his authority has crossed into the realm of fate. He had expected your quest to end in death, leaving the impossible demand to resolve the matter without further action. Now, Lúthien has joined the road, and the death sentence he imagined for a mortal stranger has become a danger shared by his only child. Thingol's voice echoes beneath the underground pillars as he commands the search, but the sound cannot reach the distant path. The halls of Menegroth feel larger after Lúthien has departed, as though a familiar light has been carried away. Torch smoke rises through the carved chambers and drifts around the empty spaces near the doors. The cushions where she rested retain a faint impression, while a loose thread on a hanging cloth trembles in the underground air. Water sounds from behind the walls, steady and indifferent to the king's commands. Guards move along the passages with careful steps, their shadows stretching across sculpted flowers and stone leaves. Above them, the forest receives the morning with dripping branches and pale mist. The cool, enclosed halls preserve every echo, yet none of those echoes can restore the quiet presence of Tinuviel. You rest briefly beside a ridge, and the road beneath you continues towards the north. Lúthien travels through another part of the woodland, guided by memory, instinct, and the faint traces left by your passing. Your journeys remain separate in distance, though the same rain has touched both cloaks and the same moon has crossed above both paths. The Silmaril waits far away in Morgoth's iron crown, beyond the lands where ordinary courage can safely travel. Thingol's demand has drawn a line from Doriath to Angband, and along that line, the histories of elves and men begin to meet. You are still mortal, and Lúthien still belongs to the immortal life of Arda, yet the boundary between the second-born and the firstborn has already been crossed. Morning settles over the woodland in a thin veil of pearl-colored light. Leaves shine at their edges, and droplets fall whenever the branches sway under the weight of the dampness. The earth is soft beneath your feet, with pockets of mud collecting beside exposed roots. A breeze moves from the west, carrying the clean scent of open hills and the darker fragrance of distant pine. The forest is no longer entirely silent, though its sounds remain small and measured. A wren shifts within a thicket, water slips over stones, and somewhere high above, wings beat once before becoming still. The cool air passes across your face, while shafts of sunlight descend between the boughs like narrow columns in a green cathedral. Lúthien finds signs of your passage and understands that the road has not yet carried you beyond reach. A torn leaf clings to a thorn, and the mud beside a shallow pool bears the outline of a boot. These small traces are enough to make the dangerous landscape feel inhabited, because each mark confirms that you have gone before her. She does not turn back towards Menegroth, although the thought of Thingol's grief remains close. The king has demanded a Silmaril to prevent a marriage, but the demand has become the beginning of a quest whose consequences will spread across Beleriand. Lúthien follows the trail with the patience of one whose memory extends beyond a single lifetime. Her love moves quietly, and the forest opens before it. The sun rises higher, though the woodland floor remains cool beneath its cover of leaves. Threads of mist lift from the stream and dissolve among the lower branches. A woodpecker taps somewhere beyond the ridge, creating a small, regular rhythm within the morning. Wet bark warms gradually, releasing a resinous scent that mingles with the sweetness of crushed flowers. The branches overhead hold pieces of blue sky, and the spaces between them brighten without becoming harsh. Along the path, pale fungi rise from the decaying wood, their caps shining like small moons left behind by the night. The forest keeps the memory of darkness even as daylight grows, and the quiet road remains gentle beneath the feet of two travelers moving towards one another. You and Lúthien now follow separate roads that curve through the same northern wilderness. You carry the pledge made before Thingol, while she carries the decision to share its danger. Behind you, Doriath remains sheltered by Melian's power, yet the protection of the kingdom cannot hold back every consequence. Before you lies the path towards Morgoth, towards Angband, and towards the iron crown that guards the stolen light. The Silmarils were made before the First Age began, when fairness shaped the radiance of the two trees into jewels of surpassing beauty. Morgoth's theft turned that beauty into a cause of grief, and Thingol's impossible demand has placed one jewel within the story of a mortal and an elven woman. Beneath the morning sky, your paths begin to draw close. The wind moves gently through the branches, carrying the sound of leaves touching in the upper canopy. Light rests upon the forest floor in shifting shapes, never remaining long upon a single stone. The stream beside the path widens and grows quieter, reflecting pale clouds between its reeds. A cool shadow lies beneath an overhanging bank, where damp soil shows the small marks of animals that came during the night. The scent of water is clean and faintly metallic, while the nearby grasses carry the fragrance of rain. In the distance, the woodland rises towards a line of hills softened by haze. Nothing announces the approaching meeting, yet the air seems attentive, and every rustle around the travelers becomes part of a greater silence. Lúthien's name continues through the forest like a song remembered without words. It bears associations with flowers and song, while Tinuviel carries the tenderness of the nightingale. These meanings belong to languages shaped by Tolkien's imagination, yet within the tale they feel rooted in the living world around her. She moves beneath branches where small white blossoms have opened after the rain, and the petals brush against her cloak. Your trail leads onward, but the distance between you is no longer growing. Your separate journeys turn back towards one another, drawn by a promise that began in the cool halls of Menegroth. Thingol had hoped to make the Silmaril an impossible barrier, but the barrier has become a bridge between the firstborn and the secondborn. A final stretch of woodland lies before you, quiet beneath the widening morning. The ground rises gently, and the trees become thinner near the crest. From the higher path, a narrow view opens across wet valleys and distant ridges, all pale beneath the receding mist. The forest behind you holds the shadowed halls of Doriath, while the road ahead points towards greater danger. Somewhere beyond those ridges, Lúthien is walking beneath the same broad sky, following the traces that remain after your passing. The coldness of dawn has softened, and a mild breeze touches your face with the scent of leaves and distant heather. You pause beside a stone, hearing only water, wind, and the quiet approach of footsteps hidden among the trees. For a moment, the forest holds both travelers within its silence, though the meeting has not yet taken place. You stand beneath the branches, mortal and weary, while Lúthien moves through the undergrowth with the strength of elven memory and mare blood. Behind you, Thingol's voice remains in the deep chambers of Menegroth, and Melian's warning waits within the king's thoughts. Ahead lies Morgoth's iron crown, the stolen Silmaril, and the long road by which a private love will enter the history of Beleriand. Moonlight has faded from the leaves, but its silver traces remain upon the wet ground. The sound of leaves around a traveller grows clearer, and another shadow appears between the trees. You and Lúthien are turning towards one another beneath the morning sky. The morning gathers around Beren and Lúthien beneath the trees, while the last silver traces of moonlight lie upon the wet ground. Beren carries no crown, no army, and no treasure worthy of a king, yet the fate of many lands has begun to rest in his hands. His clothes are torn from the long passage through danger, and the memory of Angband lies before him like a mountain beneath a cloud. Lúthien stands close beside him, her dark hair touched by the pale light of morning, while the leaves release their gathered dew. Beyond the forest, Beleriand is quiet for a little while. Birds call from hidden branches, and thin mist rests in the hollows between the roots. The air smells of moss, bark, and rain. You are standing with them beneath the trees, feeling the cool earth beneath your feet, while the road ahead seems too difficult for mortal strength. Yet Beren has heard the words of Thingol, and he knows that one path remains open. The road leads westward towards Nargothrond, where Finrod Felagund rules beneath the earth. Finrod is the eldest son of Finarfin, a lord beloved by many, and among the fairest and wisest of the princes of the Noldor. His halls lie hidden beneath the forests, where lamps burn beside dark rivers and pillars rise from polished stone. Beren goes there because he cannot fulfill the demand alone. He must seek a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, and for such a task, even the courage of a great warrior requires the strength of friends. Lúthien remains behind, though her thoughts travel with him through the forest. At Nargothrond, Beren will ask Finrod for aid, and Finrod will look upon the ring of Barahir. The western woods are damp from the night's rain, and each branch holds a trembling line of water. Your passage follows a narrow path between fern and thorn, where the soil gives softly beneath each step. A grey cloud moves slowly over the canopy, turning the morning into muted green twilight. Somewhere nearby, a stream passes over stones with a sound like quiet breathing. The trunks are dark with moisture, and small leaves cling to Beren's cloak as he moves. Lúthien's presence remains in his mind, as steady as a distant lamp. The scent of wet leaves follows the path, mingling with the faint sweetness of crushed grass. Far ahead, the forest floor begins to slope downward, and beneath the roots you sense the hidden roads of Nargothrond. The earth grows cooler there, and the air carries a trace of stone. When Beren reaches the halls of Nargothrond, he is brought before Finrod, and the great doors close behind him. He speaks of Lúthien, of Thingol's demand, and of the Silmaril that must be taken from Morgoth's crown. The request is immense, and the hall grows still as the words settle among the pillars. Then Beren shows the ring of Barahir, an ancient token shaped like two serpents whose eyes hold a green stone. Finrod recognizes it at once. He remembers Barahir, Beren's father, and the day when Barahir saved his life in the northern lands. Finrod had been surrounded by enemies, and Barahir had come with his men through danger to rescue him. In gratitude, Finrod had sworn an oath to aid Barahir and his heirs whenever aid was needed. The ring serves as evidence of the old bond between their houses. Warm lamplight lies upon the stone floor of Nargothrond, but no warmth enters the deeper reaches of the hall. The lamps are set within narrow niches, where their flames move gently in the underground air. Shadows gather behind the columns, and the sound of the river beneath the city rises through cracks in the floor. You are standing beside a long table of dark wood, watching the green stone in Barahir's ring catch the light. Around you the elves remain silent, their faces composed, their hands resting near their swords. Dust has settled upon the carved edges of the pillars, and the scent of oil, leather, and cold rock fills the chamber. Finrod's voice is quiet when he speaks, yet it carries beneath the vaulted roof. Outside, beyond many gates, rain moves through the forest. Within the hall, an older promise has awakened. Finrod remembers his promise and agrees to accompany Beren. His decision troubles the stability of his kingdom, because the lords of Nargothrond have grown cautious beneath the pressure of Morgoth's power. They know that an open journey towards Angband could bring ruin upon their hidden city. Celigorm and Curufin, sons of Feanna, have found many listeners among them, and their influence has become strong within Nargothrond. They oppose Finrod's support for Beren, arguing that the king should not spend the strength of his people upon a quest that seems impossible. Their words spread through the halls like smoke beneath a closed door. Finrod's ability to command assistance weakens, and the company he can gather becomes small. Yet his oath to Barahir proves stronger than political security. He chooses loyalty over the safety of his crown. The chamber grows quieter as Finrod rises from his seat, and the folds of his cloak fall around him like dark water. A few flames lean sideways in a current beneath the stone, then straighten again. The polished table bears marks from old knives, left by years of counsel and feasting. You hear the subdued movement of mail, the turning of a ring, and the soft closing of a door far within the city. Celegorm and Curufin remain near the edge of the hall, their faces calm, their attention fixed upon the king. The air tastes faintly of mineral water. Beneath the floor, the river continues its patient course. No storm reaches this place, yet a political storm moves through the hidden kingdom, and every silence seems to carry the weight of a decision. Finrod gathers a small company of companions, and Beren travels with them beneath the trees. The number is far less than an army, yet each companion is experienced in secrecy and war. They leave Nargothrond by a concealed passage and turn north towards Angband, Morgoth's fortress. The journey takes them through country watched by enemies, where patrols pass along old roads and smoke rises from distant camps. To avoid discovery, they disguise themselves as orcs. Their clothing is stained, their faces darkened, and their speech altered to resemble the harsh sounds of the enemy. Finrod, Beren, and the others move beneath the orc shape with lowered heads, carrying weapons hidden beneath rough garments. The north opens before them, and the shadow of Angband lengthens across the plain. Marsh water shines beneath a grey sky, broken by reeds that bend in the thin wind. You are moving along a raised strip of earth, while brown pools spread on either side, reflecting the colourless heavens. The mud grips your boots, and water trembles when distant footsteps pass through unseen ground. A slow drizzle settles upon the stained cloaks of the travellers, dulling every edge and softening every sound. The smell of peat and stagnant water rises from the marshes, while a colder scent comes from the north. Behind you, the green lands of Beleriand sink into haze. Ahead, the world becomes flatter, emptier, and more exposed. Even the birds seem to keep their distance. Under the grey sky, the disguised company appears like a line of wandering orcs, bent beneath the burden of a hidden purpose. The travellers cross the north in orc shape beneath the shadow of Angband. They pass through wide valleys where the grass is dark and burned, avoiding the roads along which Morgoth's servants travel. Finrod's memory guides them through ravines and stony hollows, but every mile brings them closer to danger. The fortress of Angband is not yet their destination, because they intend to approach it through the island of Tollingorhoth. Once called Tol Sirion, it had been held by the elves as a watchtower upon the river. Sauron, then a chief servant of Morgoth, seized it and changed its name. The company must cross the marshes near the island, but Sauron's servants watch the waterways. Their disguises may deceive ordinary eyes, though no disguise can remain safe forever. Low reeds whisper against one another as the company passes, and the sound travels farther than expected across the open water. A pale film rests upon the pools, shifting whenever a breath of wind touches the surface. Your hands are cold beneath the rough fabric of the orc cloak, and dampness gathers at the back of your neck. Each companion walks with measured patience, allowing no sudden movement to betray the strength hidden beneath the disguise. From the north comes a faint red reflection, perhaps fire upon distant stone, perhaps only clouded light. The marsh gives off a sour odor, and insects move close to the water in small, restless clouds. Every face remains lowered. Every voice is held beneath a rasping murmur. The grey landscape keeps its secrets, though the island ahead rises clearly through the mist. Nargothrond rises from the island like a dark tooth above the marshes. Its walls are black, its towers narrow, and its upper battlements disappear into drifting vapor. Sauron has filled the fortress with fear, and the water around it carries the reflection of torchlight in long, broken lines. The disguised travelers approach the causeway, but Sauron perceives that they are not what they seem. He sends servants to challenge them, and the company is taken within the island fortress. There, in the cold halls, their disguises are stripped away. Finrod's identity is revealed, and Beren's name is demanded. Neither gives the answer Sauron seeks. The prisoners are placed in a tower, where iron, damp stone, and stale air surround them. Sauron begins to question them, waiting for one voice to betray the truth. The island wind moves through the ruined trees, carrying the smell of standing water and old ash. Beneath the fortress, the marshes glimmer whenever the clouds thin, and the black walls seem to lean above them. You are inside a narrow passage where moisture darkens the stones from floor to ceiling. Iron rings are fixed into the masonry, their surfaces rough beneath your fingers. Somewhere beyond the prison chamber, a door closes with a heavy echo, followed by the distant clink of chains. No clear daylight enters the tower. The air is stale, touched by mold and lingering smoke. From far across the island come distant wolf cries, rising and fading among the broken courtyards. The fortress holds the prisoners in darkness, while the marsh water continues to shine beneath the grey sky. Sauron questions the captives about their identity, but Finrod and Beren remain silent. The companions understand that the enemy is searching for the hidden purpose of their journey, and that any admission could lead Sauron to Lúthien or to the greater designs of the Noldor. Sauron therefore begins to kill the captives one by one, while waiting for the truth to be revealed. Each night a door opens, and one prisoner is taken from the chamber. A voice answers the questioning or remains silent, and then the door closes again. The company grows smaller. Beren listens as one companion disappears after another, and the sound of their absence becomes quieter than any cry. Finrod remains beside him, knowing that the hour may come when only the two of them are left. The old oath still binds his heart. Iron chills the wall at your shoulder, and the floor beneath you is uneven beneath a thin layer of dust. The prisoners sit close together because the chamber offers little space, and the warmth of their bodies fades as the nights pass. A single opening high above admits a narrow, colorless light, which changes slowly with the weather. When rain falls, drops gather at the edge of the stone and descend at irregular intervals. Their small impacts mark the silence. The air carries iron and damp stone from the passage beyond the door. At times, a draft brings the smell of wet fur. At other times, nothing moves at all. You hear breathing, the faint shift of cloth, and the scrape of claws on a prison floor somewhere outside. The darkness seems to listen with them. The company grows quieter until the tower holds only Finrod and Beren. Sauron still demands their names, and still neither yields the truth. Beren thinks of Lúthien, whose image remains brighter than the prison walls, while Finrod remembers Barahir and the ring that brought him into this darkness. Finrod understands that his kingdom is far away, that Celegorm and Curufin have weakened his command, and that no force from Nargothrond is likely to come quickly. His crown cannot protect him within Nargothrond. Political security cannot answer the oath made beside Barahir's life. The bond between their houses has become the only kingdom that matters. Finrod has chosen to stand beside Beren, and he will not abandon him merely because the price has become clear. The tower seems to contract around the two remaining prisoners, as though the stones have drawn closer during the long hours. A thin draft passes across your face, carrying cold from the marshes and a metallic trace from the bars. Beyond the wall, something shifts among the rubble. The distant wolf cries have ceased, leaving the island without its usual warning. In the chamber, Beren's hand rests against the floor where grit presses into his palm. Finrod sits upright, his breathing slow and even, while the faint light touches one side of his face. No fire burns nearby, and the darkness has the color of old water. The scrape of claws returns along the passage, deliberate and patient. Then it stops before the door. Sauron sends a werewolf into the prison chamber, expecting the beast to kill Beren and force Finrod to reveal his identity. The creature enters beneath the low arch, its body filling the doorway and its eyes reflecting the dim light. Beren has little room to move, and the stone floor offers no advantage. Finrod rises between him and the werewolf. Though weakened by captivity, he remains a prince of the Noldor, and his strength has not left him. The beast lunges. Finrod catches it, and the chamber fills with the sound of struggle. Claws strike stone, teeth close upon metal, and the walls return each noise with a heavy echo. Finrod fights the werewolf not for his crown, but for Beren's life. At last, the beast tears him down. The prison floor bears fresh scratches where the struggle has passed, and dust hangs briefly in the narrow air. You can smell wet fur, iron, and the sharp scent of stone broken beneath claws. The doorway remains open, showing only a corridor of darkness beyond. Beren kneels beside Finrod, while the last light from above rests across the king's hands. Outside, the marshes lie motionless beneath the grey sky, and no bird crosses the island. The fortress has become still in a way that feels unnatural, as if every hidden creature waits for the next sound. Finrod's breathing weakens. The rough wall presses coldly against your back, and the silence around you grows deeper than the earlier cries. At the center of that silence, the old oath has reached its final cost. Finrod dies defending Beren, and the promise made to Barahir is kept. His death leaves Beren alone within the prison, but the king has given him the time required for help to reach the island. Beren survives the imprisonment, while Lúthien searches for him beyond the walls of Nargothrond. She has not accepted the distance between them, and her courage carries her into danger once again. With her travels, Huan, the great hound of Valinor who serves Celegorm. Huan has crossed many lands, and his strength is greater than that of ordinary beasts. Lúthien and Huan reach Tolingorhoth, finding the island beneath a darkening sky. Sauron's power still holds the fortress, yet another power has come quietly through the marshes. The road to Beren is beginning to open. The marsh water shines beneath a grey sky as Lúthien and Huan approach the island. Reeds brush against Huan's legs, and droplets cling to the dark strands of his coat. Lúthien's cloak gathers the wetness of the air, but her steps remain light upon the narrow ground. The water carries small circles away from each stone, and the fortress appears beyond them, tall and black above the vapor. No torch burns on the nearest tower. A wind moves over the pools, bringing the sour smell of mud and the faint odor of charred wood. Huan raises his head, listening. You are standing near the causeway, where the island's silence rests upon the marshes. Above, cloud moves slowly across the hidden moon, and beneath it the dark tooth of Tolingorhoth waits. Lúthien challenges Sauron's power through song and enchantment. She does not meet him with an army, nor does she bring the banners of any kingdom. Her strength lies in the beauty of her voice, in the ancient power that flows through her as the daughter of Melian, and in the courage that has already carried her through many perils. Sauron comes forth from the fortress and confronts her upon the island. His shape is terrible, and his will presses upon the air like a storm. Lúthien sings before him. Her song passes through the walls, over the marsh, and into the halls where Beren waits. Sauron answers with his own power, but Lúthien's enchantment reaches deeper than his pride. Huan stands beside her, silent and watchful, while the contest moves between song and shadow. The air changes as Lúthien's voice travels across the stones, and the fortress seems to listen despite itself. Her words are not loud, yet they fill the courtyards and enter the narrow passages beneath the towers. You feel the sound through the soles of your feet, where the old masonry trembles with delicate vibration. Huan's breath forms pale vapor in the cold, and his claws remain planted upon the wet ground. Sauron's presence brings a smell of smoke and bitter metal, but the song carries the scent of leaves after rain. The marsh water reflects the black walls, then breaks into ripples beneath a passing wind. Above the battlements, mist folds and unfolds. Somewhere inside, an iron chain sways once, followed by the hush that comes after a note held beyond ordinary breath. Sauron is forced to surrender Tolin-Gorhoth and flee. The fortress changes hands, and the power that has ruled the island withdraws into the northern darkness. The old name, Tol Sirion, returns with the breaking of Sauron's enchantment, though the stones remember the years of fear. Lúthien enters the tower with Huan, and the prison doors yield before them. Beren is found beside the body of Finrod, exhausted but alive. The road to Beren opens again, though the price of that opening lies in the silent chamber. Finrod's companions are gone, and Finrod himself will not return to Nargothrond. Yet his oath has endured beyond his kingdom, beyond his crown, and beyond the reach of Sauron's power. Beren leaves the island with Lúthien, carrying grief and purpose together beneath the paling sky. A sudden stillness follows Sauron's defeat, and the island seems larger without the pressure of his will. The stale air begins to move through the corridors, drawing the smell of marsh water into the tower. Iron doors stand open, their hinges damp and dark. Dust settles upon the marks made by the werewolf, while a thin line of morning enters through the high window. Outside, reeds shine with moisture, and the grey sky lightens along the eastern edge. Huan's paws make quiet sounds upon the stone, and Lúthien's cloak brushes the threshold. Beren pauses beside Finrod, where the cold floor holds the fallen king. No distant wolf cries answer from the island now. Only wind passes over the battlements, and the fortress rests beneath a silence that is almost gentle. Finrod's death reaches far beyond Tolin-Gorhoth, because the loyalty he showed becomes part of the history of Beleriand. He had been king of Nargothrond, a prince of the Noldor, and a lord whose wisdom might have protected his people for many years. Celegorm and Curufin had opposed his support for Beren, and their influence had weakened Finrod's ability to command assistance. Their caution preserved the safety of Nargothrond for a time, but it could not alter the promise made between Finrod and Barahir. The ring of Barahir had carried Beren into the hidden city, and the same ring had awakened Finrod's memory. In the prison, the old bond between their houses became stronger than fear. Finrod remembered Barahir, remembered his promise, and gave his life for Barahir's son. The path away from the island lies wet beneath the morning, with shallow water shining between the reeds. You walk beside Beren and Lúthien as the first pale light reaches the marsh. Behind you, Tolin-Gorhoth rises black against the thinning mist, but its towers no longer seem alive with watchfulness. Huan moves ahead, his broad body dark against the colorless ground. The air smells of rain, mud, and distant grass. A few birds begin calling from somewhere beyond the water, cautiously at first, then with greater confidence. Beren's steps are slow because grief weighs upon him, while Lúthien remains close enough that their shoulders sometimes touch. The cold air passes across your face, and the marsh releases its reflection of the sky. Northward, Angband still waits, holding Morgoth's crown and the Silmaril. Beren has survived the imprisonment until Lúthien and Huan reach the island, but survival has not made the road easier. Finrod is gone, the companions are dead, and the enemy has learned that someone seeks the Silmaril. The journey towards Angband must continue, because the oath given by Beren to Thingol has not been fulfilled. Lúthien has rescued him from the tower, and Sauron has been driven from Tolin-Gorhoth, but Morgoth remains upon his throne. The dark fortress of Angband stands beyond the northern plains, and its iron crown waits above the jewel. Beren and Lúthien now travel together again, carrying the memory of Finrod between them. The road is open for a while. Beyond it lies danger without measure, and beneath that danger, the quiet strength of an ancient oath. Morning rests upon the marshes in a thin veil of silver, and the water reflects broken strips of cloud. Your feet leave dark impressions along the soft earth, which fills slowly with clear moisture. Huan's fur carries beads of rain, and the great hound moves with steady patience beside Lúthien. Beren looks back only once, towards the island where Finrod fell. The black towers fade gradually into mist, while the reeds close over the path behind you. A faint breeze crosses the open land, touching your face with the cool scent of water and sedge. In the distance, the northern horizon remains dark beneath Angband's shadow. Yet the daylight continues to widen, and the first warmth begins to reach the stones. The world is not safe, though it is moving again. The name of Finrod remains with Beren as he journeys north, and the name of Barahir remains within Finrod's final act. Nargothrond has lost its king, Tolkien has lost its master, and the road towards Angband has opened through sacrifice. The ring of Barahir rests upon Beren's hand, small and bright against the weariness of the road. 3 times remembered, the bond becomes almost a presence beside him. Barahir, who saved Finrod, Finrod, who kept his promise, and Beren, who must carry that promise onward. Lúthien walks at his side, and Huan guards the path before them. Behind the travelers, the island grows distant beneath the grey sky. Ahead, the land rises slowly towards the fortress of Morgoth, where the Silmaril waits beneath an iron crown. The last marsh pools lie behind you, still shining beneath the grey sky, while the ground becomes firmer beneath the travelers' feet. Wet grasses bend in the wind, and small stones press through the thin soil. No tower rises nearby now, though the memory of black walls remains clear in the mind. Huan's breathing is slow and deep, keeping a quiet rhythm beside the road. Lúthien's footsteps make almost no sound, while Beren's tread is heavier from exhaustion and grief. The air carries smoke from distant fires, mingled with the clean smell of open ground. Clouds drift above the northern plain, their lower edges dark against the faint light. In that subdued landscape, Finrod's oath travels with them, silent as the ring upon Beren's hand and enduring as the road itself. Lúthien entered the lands of Nargothrond beneath a sky already fading towards evening, following hidden roads beneath the forest where the trees grew close together. The kingdom lay within the earth, behind guarded doors and winding passages, and its rulers had not expected her arrival. Celegorm and Curufin had taken political control of Nargothrond during Finrod's absence, while the rightful king remained bound by his oath and distant upon the road to Angband. Their authority rested upon uncertainty, and every visitor was measured according to the advantage that might be drawn from their presence. Within the underground halls, torchlight rested upon pillars of stone and polished walls. The warmth of the caverns gathered around you, softened by smoke and the faint mineral scent of deep places. Leather straps creaked as guards moved beside Lúthien, and the breath of hounds drifted through the passages with a low animal heat. Water ran somewhere beyond the walls, falling patiently into a basin hidden beneath the rock. Under the trees outside, wet earth pressed darkly beneath the roots, but Nargothrond held the stillness of a sealed chamber, where footsteps travelled far and every murmur seemed to linger. After entering the lands of Nargothrond, Lúthien was captured by Celegorm and Curufin and brought before the gathered people as a prisoner. The kingdom hesitated around them, for many remembered Finrod with loyalty, while others feared the strength of the brothers who had assumed command. Celegorm claimed that Lúthien should be held within Nargothrond, and Curufin supported him with quiet words concerning order, safety, and the dangers beyond the gates. Their language carried the shape of duty, although their purpose was more personal. They intended to use Lúthien's situation for their own advantage, keeping her as a living piece upon the board of their designs. Her capture could restrain Beren, influence Doriath, and strengthen their position among the uncertain people of Nargothrond. Yet Lúthien did not become smaller within their plans. She stood in the torchlit chamber with her dark hair falling over her shoulders, while the stone beneath her feet held the distant tremor of the underground river. The flames leaned in their iron brackets whenever a draft passed through the tunnels. Their light moved over the faces of the watchers, brightening one cheek and leaving the other in shadow. Warm air rose from vents in the floor, carrying the smell of ash, old timber, and damp rock. A guard's leather glove brushed against a buckle, producing a small, dry sound that seemed unusually clear. Beyond the doors, the forest waited beneath rain-dark branches, and beneath those branches the earth retained the cold impression of Lúthien's passage. For a time, Nargothrond remained suspended between obedience and refusal. Celegorm spoke with the confidence of one accustomed to command, while Curufin watched the expressions around him and understood how fear could be shaped into consent. The people knew that Finrod had gone because of his oath to Beren, and they knew that the brothers had not shared that burden. Their authority therefore carried a hidden weakness, though it had not yet become visible enough to disturb the halls. Lúthien's presence made that weakness harder to conceal. She was not an ordinary captive, and the strength of her will passed quietly through the chamber, moving from one silent witness to another. Celegorm ordered that she be confined, and those who led her away did so without eagerness. The corridors descended and turned, narrowing into passages where the torchlight became redder and the ceilings lower. Behind one door, in a chamber cut from the living rock, Lúthien waited under Celegorm's authority. Huan, Celegorm's hound, remained near her prison. He was a great dog, larger than any ordinary hound, with a body made for pursuit and a gaze that seemed to contain more understanding than the guards wished to acknowledge. He had followed Celegorm faithfully through many lands, yet his loyalty was not blind. His attention changed whenever he looked towards Lúthien, and beneath the quiet of the underground halls, a decision began to form within him. The chamber held the smell of wet stone and old straw. Torchlight trembled across the floor, catching on the metal of a ring and the worn grain of a wooden bench. Huan lay near the threshold, his breathing deep and measured, while Lúthien sat with her hands resting calmly in her lap. From the corridor came the softened rhythm of distant movement, followed by the faint scrape of a spear against the wall. The air was warm against your face, although a narrow current of cold passed beneath the door. At last, Huan chose Lúthien's side. He did not speak at once, for the tale placed magical conditions upon his voice, allowing him words only on certain occasions. His silence therefore became part of his meaning, and the turning of his head conveyed what speech could not. When the chance came, he helped Lúthien escape, leading her away from Celegorm's control through passages known to him from years of hunting and guard duty. The escape unfolded without clamor. Huan moved ahead through the tunnels, pausing where guards stood beyond a bend and choosing the darker route when torchlight approached. Lúthien followed him over uneven steps and beneath low arches, her cloak brushing the rock with a whisper. Together they passed through a service way and emerged beneath the trees, where the night air felt colder than the caverns of Nargothrond. Huan's breath rose briefly in the darkness, and the wet earth received the sound of their departure. Celegorm and Curufin discovered that their prisoner had gone, but the delay before pursuit allowed Lúthien and Huan to travel beyond the immediate reach of the kingdom. The forest closed around them, concealing their tracks beneath fallen leaves and rain-softened soil. Huan carried the knowledge of hidden paths, while Lúthien carried the purpose that had brought her into Nargothrond. They traveled towards the island fortress where Beren was imprisoned, for Beren's fate remained joined to hers. Night gathered between the trunks. Wet branches bent above the path, releasing drops that touched Lúthien's hair and darkened Huan's coat. The smell of moss rose from the ground, mixed with leather, leaf mold, and the warm breath of the hound moving at her side. Somewhere beyond the trees, a stream crossed the earth over stones polished by years of water. Huan's paws made little noise, while Lúthien stepped lightly behind him, and the forest seemed to make room for their quiet passage. The island fortress stood within the waters of a lake, and upon it Sauron held Beren beneath the shadow of his power. Reaching the island required courage, secrecy, and the peculiar strength that belonged to Lúthien's song. Huan brought her through the darkness until the walls and towers rose before them, black against the water. The fortress was called Tolingorhoth, and its stones carried the memory of the watch that Sauron had established there. Lúthien's song played a decisive role in defeating Sauron. It passed over the island like a thread of silver through a chamber of iron, reaching beyond doors, walls, and the guarded depths where Beren was held. Sauron answered with power of his own, but the song did not yield to his darkness. Its strength was not loud, nor did it depend upon force alone. It entered the fortress as light enters a room through a narrow opening. Water moved around Tolingorhoth with a slow, secret sound. The lake reflected fragments of starlight between the black reeds, while the island walls rose damply from the shore. Huan stood near the water, his coat carrying the scent of rain and pine bark. Lúthien's voice travelled across the cold surface, and the air around her seemed to gather into a single listening shape. The fortress remained dark, yet within that darkness, something had begun to loosen. When Sauron was defeated, his hold over Tolingorhoth was broken, and Beren was released from the imprisonment that had nearly ended his life. Beren and Lúthien then left the island with Huan beside them. They did not return immediately to Doriath. The road continued north, drawing them towards Angband, where the Oath and the Silmaril still waited beneath Morgoth's dominion. The land beyond the island opened into rough country, where streams ran through hollows, and the trees became more widely scattered. Celegorm and Curufin pursued them after their political position weakened, for the fall of Sauron had changed the balance within Nargothrond. Their control no longer appeared secure, and their anger followed the fugitives into the wilderness. The company travelled by lesser paths, but the brothers knew the northern country well enough to close the distance. Wind moved through the empty northern plain, carrying the dry scent of grass and the colder breath of distant mountains. Beren walked with difficulty, his body weakened by captivity and the long journey from the island fortress. Lúthien stayed near him, while Huan ranged ahead and returned with his ears turned towards the horizon. The sky stretched wide above the plain, and the absence of trees made every sound seem exposed beneath the moving clouds. Curufin shot an arrow at Beren while the company was travelling. The attack came suddenly from a rise beyond the path, where the brothers had hidden among stones and sparse grass. Lúthien was wounded while protecting Beren, placing herself between him and the arrow before its course could reach his heart. Beren survived, but the arrow struck him with enough force to bring him down upon the ground. For a moment, the plain became utterly still. The arrowhead held a cold gleam beneath the open sky, and the hush after the sudden attack seemed deeper than any ordinary silence. Huan turned towards the distant ridge, his body tense, while Beren breathed through the pain. Lúthien's hand pressed against the wound, and the warmth of his blood passed through the fabric beneath her fingers. Grass bent around them beneath the wind, then slowly lifted again. Celegorm and Curufin withdrew when their attack failed to achieve its purpose. Huan's presence made further pursuit dangerous, and the brothers understood that the open plain offered little shelter for a second attempt. Lúthien remained with Beren until the danger had moved beyond the ridge. She examined the wound carefully, working with the calm concentration that had guided her through the prison of Nargothrond and the fortress of Sauron. Healing herbs were crushed between her fingers and laid against Beren's injury. Their scent was green and bitter, rising sharply through the dry smell of the grass. Lúthien tore cloth into narrow strips and bound the wound with patient hands, while Huan watched from a short distance. The wind passed over the plain in long movements, stirring the edge of her cloak and carrying loose grains of dust across the stones. Beren's breathing gradually steadied beneath the darkening sky. Lúthien healed Beren as far as the wilderness allowed, and his strength returned slowly. They rested in a hollow where the ground offered a little shelter from the wind, beside roots that had pushed through the earth like old fingers. Huan remained awake through the colder hours, listening for the return of the brothers. The journey north could not yet be abandoned, though each step required more care than before. The way towards Angband became increasingly barren. Trees stood in small groups, their branches bent by the northern weather, and the soil thinned over stretches of stone. No settlement offered protection, and no friendly road crossed the open land. Beren and Lúthien therefore moved by concealment, using hollows, ridges, and the long folds of the ground. Huan guided them where the darkness was deepest. At a hidden place beneath a line of rocks, Huan brought them the skins of Draugluin and Thuringwethil. Draugluin was a great werewolf serving Morgoth, feared among the servants of Angband for his size and ferocity. Thuringwethil was Sauron's vampire messenger, a creature of dark wings who carried messages between the island fortress and the greater stronghold. Their skins preserved the outward forms required for a dangerous deception. The skins were heavy, coarse, and cold from the place where Huan had found them. Draugluin's hide carried the sour odor of wet fur and old blood, while Thuringwethil's covering seemed thinner, leathery, and strangely dry. The wind lifted one edge and made it tremble against the stone. Beren touched the material with caution, and Lúthien studied the shapes before them as though reading an unfamiliar language. Huan helped Beren and Lúthien prepare the disguises. Beren took on the shape associated with Draugluin, while Lúthien assumed the form of Thuringwethil. Their movements became slower and more guarded beneath the skins, and their voices were kept low whenever the wind carried sound towards the northern watchlands. The disguises allowed the pair to approach the gates of Angband. The road beneath their borrowed forms was difficult. Beren's shoulders carried the breadth of the werewolf's shape, while Lúthien moved with the folded darkness of the vampire messenger. Huan travelled near them, sometimes ahead and sometimes behind, ensuring that no unexpected watcher came between the company and the fortress. The disguise concealed their faces, yet it could not remove the need for patience. Every pause, every turn of the head, and every silence had to resemble the servants they imitated. Cold air crossed the plain from the direction of the mountains. It moved beneath the skins and found the seams where leather and living form met. The ground was hard underfoot, marked by pale stones and narrow cracks filled with frost. No birds called above the empty country, and the only sounds were the brushing of wind, the measured tread of the travellers, and Huan's distant breathing when he circled back through the darkness. Morgoth's northern stronghold grew upon the horizon, though the gates of Angband remained hidden within the folds of the land. Smoke rose faintly from unseen furnaces, flattening beneath the grey sky before drifting westward. Beren and Lúthien continued in the shapes of Draugluin and Thuringwethil, while Huan kept the rhythm of the march. The road from Nargothrond had passed through captivity, flight, song, pursuit, blood, and healing, yet its purpose remained unchanged. Behind them lay Nargothrond, warm beneath the earth, where Celegorm and Curufin had held authority during Finrod's absence. Behind them stood Tollingorhoth, no longer ruled by Sauron after Lúthien's song had broken his power. Before them waited Angband, and within it Morgoth guarded the Silmarils beneath the weight of his iron crown. The names remained with them through the wind: Nargothrond, Tollingorhoth, Angband. Huan's silent companionship continued beside the road, and the old conditions upon his speech remained part of the strange order governing his loyalty. He did not need many words. His ears, his pauses, and the direction of his gaze were enough to guide the travellers through the last uncertain miles. Beneath the skins of Draugluin and Thuringwethil, Beren and Lúthien approached the gates of Angband, while the northern wind swept over the plain and carried their footsteps into the dark. You are walking beneath the northern wind, where the plain rises slowly towards the dark foundations of Angband. Beren and Lúthien move ahead of you in the forms of Draugluin and Thuringwethil, their borrowed shapes bent low beneath the ash-laden air. The fortress is Morgoth's principal stronghold in the north of Middle-earth, raised above immense underground works where furnaces burn without rest. Smoke gathers over its towers, and red firelight glimmers upon black iron. Morgoth is the name taken by Melkor, once the greatest rebel power in Arda, and every road towards his dwelling seems to descend into the memory of that rebellion. You hear no birds above the plain, only the far vibration of subterranean furnaces beneath the stone. The black gates stand before you like cliffs cut from one unbroken mass of iron. Their surfaces are dulled by soot, yet narrow seams of red remain visible where fire burns behind the metal. Ash drifts sideways across the ground, settling over old footprints and broken stones. The air tastes of smoke, hot dust, and something bitter rising from the caverns below. You feel the warmth of the fortress before you reach the threshold, though the wind remains cold upon your back. At intervals, a deep tremor passes through the earth, and the gate posts answer with a low, almost inaudible shudder. The shapes of Draugluin and Thuringwethil seem natural in that country, where strange creatures patrol beneath the red reflection of the fires. Nothing in the northern darkness appears entirely alive or entirely still. You approach the gatekeepers with the slow, heavy movement of a werewolf and the silent, winged outline of a bat. The sentries recognize the shape of Draugluin, whose name is feared among the servants of Angband, and their suspicion eases into reluctant obedience. They do not understand that Beren is hidden within that form, nor that Lúthien has taken the shape of Thuringwethil, the vampire messenger who once flew beneath Morgoth's banners. The gatekeepers look closely, but deception rests upon familiarity, and the known terror of Draugluin passes more readily than an unfamiliar face. You hear chains shifting above the entrance as the great doors open inward. Beyond them lies Angband, with its smoke, iron, fire, and immeasurable works beneath the earth. A breath of furnace heat moves through the gateway and presses against your face. It carries a faint metallic smell, as though rain had fallen upon armor and vanished before touching the ground. The passage beyond is broad enough for many creatures to walk abreast, but the ceiling disappears into shadow. Red firelight lies in broken bands across the floor, reflected from black iron plates fixed along the walls. Ash floats through the draught like grey snow, turning slowly before it settles. Somewhere below, enormous furnaces labor with a deep vibration that never quite becomes a sound. The darkness seems to have weight, and the warmth seems to come from beneath rather than from any visible flame. Behind you, the gates close with distant heaviness, leaving only the hidden breathing of Angband around you. Beren and Lúthien pass beneath the black gates, and the first threshold closes behind them. You remain within the scene as the disguised pair proceed through the outer passages, guided by the instinct of creatures who belong to Morgoth's household. Guards step aside, and lesser servants lower their eyes, unwilling to challenge the passage of Draugluin. Lúthien carries a magical cloak whose power is joined to her gifts of concealment and sleep. Beneath the darkened shape of Thuringwethil, that cloak hangs close to her body, waiting for the moment when its hidden strength will be released. Beren keeps near her, his wolfish head turned towards each branching corridor. Angband stretches inward, and every passage leads deeper towards the throne of Morgoth. The corridors become warmer as you travel inward, although the stone beneath your feet remains cold and uneven. Thin streams of vapor creep from cracks in the floor, disappearing around iron pillars stained with age. Lamps burn within shallow bowls, and each flame throws a red reflection upon the metal beside it. The light does not brighten the fortress. It merely reveals more surfaces upon which darkness may gather. You hear claws against stone, the scrape of chains, and the slow shifting of bodies resting in alcoves. Above these smaller sounds, the subterranean furnaces continue their profound vibration. It rises through your ankles and knees, passing into your chest as steady pressure. The scent of ash gives way to hot iron, then to damp earth, then to the faint animal musk of the sleeping host. Lúthien begins to sing, and her song enters the halls without force. It does not sound like a command, nor does it resemble the cries and horns that govern the fortress. The melody moves softly through the corridors, passing beneath doors and between pillars, touching the guards before they understand that they have heard it. You watch the nearest sentry lean against his spear. His head lowers, and the iron point slips from his fingers to the floor. Farther within Angband, other creatures pause beside their duties, their limbs growing heavy beneath the song. Beren continues forward, and Lúthien follows with the measured grace of a shadow. Her voice travels through the fortress like a quiet darkness, spreading where firelight cannot reach. The song changes the texture of the air around you. Red light trembles on black iron, while the melody seems to draw a veil across every hard edge. The heat of the furnaces remains, yet its intensity becomes distant, as if thick walls have grown between you and the flames. Ash settles upon the floor without disturbance, and the smallest flakes appear to hang for a moment inside the red glow. One creature after another becomes still. Some lie beside their weapons, while others sink against pillars, their breathing deepening into slow, even rhythms. The great underground works continue to labor far below, but their vibration now seems almost companionable. Through the vast sleeping halls, the song passes like a dim river beneath the doors of night. You move farther into Angband, while the guards and many creatures fall asleep. Lúthien's cloak helps conceal her presence, and the song carries her power beyond the limits of ordinary hearing. Beren follows the direction of her gaze, stepping over bodies that lie motionless beside the walls. The fortress opens into chambers of increasing size, each one supported by pillars of black stone and iron. In the distance, stairways descend towards lower works, while other passages climb towards the halls of Morgoth's court. No alarm rises from behind you, and no horn sounds from the gate. The deception remains unbroken as the sleeping host lies undisturbed, allowing the pair to pass through Angband towards Morgoth's throne. You can feel the temperature changing as the route approaches the central halls. Warm air rises through grills set into the floor, carrying the smell of coal, metal, and old smoke. The walls become smoother, shaped by tools or powers greater than tools, and the iron fittings grow larger with each chamber. Pale ash clings to the edges of steps, where it has been carried from unseen furnaces below. The light is mostly red, reflected rather than emitted, and your shadow moves across the metal in long, wavering shapes. From behind distant doors comes the murmur of sleeping breath. It blends with the subterranean vibration until Angband itself seems to breathe beneath the mountain. The central hall lies before you, vast enough to contain an army. At its far end, Morgoth sits upon his throne beneath the iron crown. The crown is heavy and cruelly shaped, its points rising around the dark outline of his head. Set within it are the 3 Silmarils stolen from Fëanor, and their hidden brilliance remains visible beneath the soot and shadow. You see the jewels as living points of light within the darkness, each surrounded by a clarity that the fires of Angband cannot imitate. Around Morgoth, his court and servants lie scattered in sleep, overcome by Lúthien's song. Beren stops at the edge of the hall, while Lúthien steps forward and lets the last notes of her melody reach the throne. The hall is colder than the passages behind you, though the iron beneath the throne radiates a low and constant heat. Smoke hangs near the ceiling in layers, and red reflections move slowly over the polished black floor. The 3 jewels shine with a light that seems to possess its own weather, clear and pale against the sooty air. It touches the iron crown without becoming part of it. Around the sleeping figures, cloaks and armor lie in folds, their surfaces softened by dust. You hear the slow breathing of the court, the faint settling of metal, and the deep pulse of furnaces below. No foot moves beneath the throne, and no spear lifts beside the steps. The quiet is immense, yet it does not feel empty. Lúthien appears before Morgoth and sings directly to him. Her voice rises through the throne room with a gentleness that holds no visible weapon, drawing Morgoth's attention away from everything else. You see the dark head of the rebel power lift slightly beneath the iron crown. His gaze follows the movement of her form, while the creatures nearest him remain trapped within the spell of the melody. The song tells of distances beyond Angband, of shadows passing over fields where no furnace burns, and of sleep descending upon strength that believes itself unassailable. Morgoth listens. His attention, vast and terrible, becomes fixed upon Lúthien. Then the weight of the song overcomes him, and Morgoth falls into enchanted sleep beneath his own crown. The red firelight continues to move across the hall, although no flame comes near the throne. Shadows gather beneath the pillars and soften the outlines of the sleeping host. Morgoth's breathing is slow and heavy, descending into the stone like a dull tide. The iron crown rests upon him with its 3 distant lights, and each jewel casts a small clarity across the darkness. You sense something dangerous in that brightness, because the Silmarils remain holy even within the dwelling of evil. Their radiance does not belong to Angband, and the surrounding blackness cannot consume it. Lúthien waits beside the throne, her cloak falling around her like a fold of night, while Beren begins to climb. Beren reaches the throne and places his hands upon the iron crown. The metal is hot beneath his fingers, and the points of the crown rise above him like the branches of a dead tree. Lúthien remains nearby, watching the sleeping Morgoth and the stillness of the court. Beren works carefully at the setting that holds the nearest Silmaril. You hear the faint scrape of his knife against the iron, followed by the deeper vibration of the fortress beneath the floor. The jewel brightens as its fastening loosens, and sudden heat touches Beren's hands. At last, the Silmaril comes free. Its light enters the darkness with startling force, and Beren holds it close while the iron crown remains upon Morgoth's head. The jewel's radiance changes the hall without becoming a flame. It sends white light across black iron, revealing scratches, rivets, dust, and the sleeping faces of the court. The red reflections from the furnaces fade before it, as though the underground fires have become distant embers. Heat gathers around Beren's hand, but the light itself is clean and sharp, without smoke or ash. You feel its presence against the darkness as pressure upon the eyes and skin. The Silmaril seems small enough to carry, yet its brightness possesses the breadth of open sky. Lúthien's cloak absorbs the edges of that illumination, keeping the pair concealed while the sleeping host remains undisturbed. Beren attempts to cut away the remaining 2 Silmarils. The first movement of the knife meets the iron setting, and sudden resistance passes through the blade. He presses again, but the metal gives a sharp sound, and the knife breaks. The fragment falls among the shadows below the throne, while the remaining jewels stay fixed within the crown. You see Beren pause with the living light in one hand and the broken knife in the other. Lúthien turns towards the darkened court, listening for any change in the sleeping breaths. No creature wakes. The failure has made no cry, yet the stillness now feels narrower, as though the halls themselves have become aware of the attempt. The air around the throne grows strangely unsettled. White light from the Silmaril crosses the iron floor and touches the points of Morgoth's crown. The remaining jewels answer with a faint brilliance, while the broken knife lies among flakes of metal. A warm current rises from beneath the dais and carries the scent of ash into the hall. Somewhere below, one furnace opens or collapses, producing a deep tremor that passes through the pillars. Dust loosens from the ceiling and falls in thin veils. The sleeping figures remain motionless, their shadows stretched towards the throne. For a moment, the whole fortress seems suspended between the red glow of its fires and the pale, dangerous light held by Beren. Beren and Lúthien begin their escape from the throne room. The sleeping host of Angband cannot prevent them from leaving, for Lúthien's song continues to hold the court in enchanted rest. They pass back through the great hall, descending the steps and crossing between fallen guards. Beren keeps the Silmaril enclosed within his grasp, though its heat presses painfully against his hand. Lúthien moves beside him, her magical cloak dimming the outline of both figures. Behind them, Morgoth remains beneath the iron crown, and the broken knife lies near the throne. As they reach the outer passages, a disturbance begins behind them. Morgoth is stirring, roused by the pain and the disturbance within his own hall. Cooler air reaches you as the passage slopes towards the gate. The furnace warmth thins, replaced by a draught smelling of stone, soot, and the open plain beyond the fortress. Ash enters through narrow cracks in the doors and skims across the floor. The red light becomes weaker, interrupted by long stretches of near blackness. Behind you, the deep vibration of the subterranean works continues without haste, indifferent to the escape moving above them. The song still travels through distant halls, but its sound is quieter now, almost hidden beneath the sleeping breaths. Ahead, the black gates show a narrow line of night, and beyond that line lies the cold northern wind. At the threshold of Angband, Carcharoth attacks. He is the greatest wolf of the fortress, bred and strengthened in Morgoth's service, and his body fills the gate passage with dark fur and muscle. You see his eyes catch the last red firelight as he lunges towards the pair. Beren moves between Lúthien and the jaws, and Carcharoth bites through his arm. The wolf tears away Beren's hand, the hand that holds the Silmaril. The jewel vanishes into the great mouth, and Beren's cry of pain is lost beneath the sudden roar of the beast. Lúthien's cloak whips around her, while the gates stand open to the night. Carcharoth swallows the jewel and flees in pain and madness. The bite leaves the air filled with the smell of blood, hot fur, and scorched darkness. Carcharoth's body twists as the Silmaril burns within him, and pale light shines through the gaps between his teeth before he turns away. His claws strike sparks from the iron threshold, scattering tiny red points across the ash. The wolf runs into the night with a broken, furious rhythm, carrying the holy jewel inside him. Beren falls against the gatepost, and the cold wind touches the wound where his hand had been. Lúthien bends beside him, her cloak gathering around his shoulders. Behind you, Angband remains a red-lit mass of smoke and iron, while the sound of Carcharoth's flight fades across the plain. For a while, the lovers remain at the gate, alive but surrounded by new danger. Beren has lost the hand that carried the Silmaril, and Carcharoth has escaped with the jewel into the darkness beyond the fortress. Morgoth's crown has been damaged but not emptied, and 2 Silmarils still rest within its iron setting. The sleeping host has not followed them, yet the order of Angband has already begun to close around the disturbance. You stand beneath the black gates while ash settles around your feet. The cold night presses against the heat left by the jewel, and the contrast seems almost unbearable. Lúthien helps Beren rise, and together they leave Angband behind. The plain outside is wider than it appeared before the descent. Ash drifts from the fortress and crosses the ground in pale sheets, sometimes catching the last red reflections from the towers. The northern wind moves freely here, carrying the clean scent of frost over the harsher smells of smoke and iron. Behind you, Angband glows beneath its mantle of darkness, its underground furnaces pulsing far below the surface. The fortress does not sleep as Morgoth sleeps. Its chambers remain full of heat, machinery, stone, and waiting shadows. You hear the slow rhythm of Beren's uneven steps and the softer movement of Lúthien's cloak. Far away, Carcharoth runs with the Silmaril burning inside him. Beren and Lúthien have passed through Angband towards Morgoth's throne, and they have left the fortress alive. One Silmaril has been freed from the Iron Crown, though it is no longer safely within Beren's grasp. Morgoth remains in the north beneath the two jewels that could not be taken, while Carcharoth carries the third through the night. The knife is broken, the crown is damaged, and the holy light has entered a creature of pain and madness. You walk beside the lovers as the gates grow smaller behind you. The air becomes colder, the ash grows thinner, and the subterranean vibration fades beneath the wind. Yet the danger does not fade. It has begun a new journey beyond Angband, following the wolf into the darkness. You walk beside Beren and Lúthien as the gates of Angband grow smaller behind you, while the northern darkness thins into a colder, quieter night. Ash lies beneath your feet, and the wind carries it away in pale streams across the empty ground. Behind you, the iron doors close upon the hidden halls, the broken knife, the damaged crown, and the wolf that has vanished into darkness. Carcharoth runs before you, carrying the Silmaril inside his belly, where its holy fire burns without rest. The jewel has not been lost, although no hand can yet reach it. It remains within the great wolf, buried beneath muscle and blood, and its radiance torments the creature with every stride. Carcharoth's pain drives him into a frenzy, and he crosses the wilderness like a living storm. You hear no clear rhythm in his movement, only the heavy pounding of paws and the tearing of branches beneath his passage. Beren and Lúthien return towards Doriath, moving slowly through the rough country beyond Angband. Beren's wounded arm hangs close against his body, and the place where his hand was taken has been bound with strips of cloth. The loss gives him a new name, Urchamion, the One-Handed. That name travels with him through the cold, as Beren Urchamion walks beneath a sky where the stars are faint behind drifting vapor. Lúthien stays beside him, her dark hair stirred by the northern wind. The two of them carry no treasure in their hands, yet the fate of Middle-earth has been altered by what they have done. The Silmaril remains hidden in Carcharoth, and the wolf carries its light towards the borders of Doriath. Mist gathers over the rivers of Osiriand, although the lovers have not yet reached the green lands beyond the forest. It rises from the water in low veils, sliding between stones and reeds and softening the distant trees. The ground is damp beneath your boots, and every hollow holds a dark pool reflecting a broken fragment of sky. Somewhere far away, a night bird calls once, then falls silent. Lúthien's footsteps make almost no sound among the wet leaves, while Beren moves with the careful weight of a man who has suffered greatly and still continues. The air smells of rain, bark, and cold earth. Mist lies along the rivers of Osiriand like a quiet memory, and the pale water carries small branches towards the south. You feel the chill pass through your cloak, but the land is gentler than Angband. There are no iron walls here, no furnaces beneath the ground, and no red glare trembling against the roof of the world. Only the distant wind remains, moving through empty grasslands and the black branches of the forest. Carcharoth reaches the borders of Doriath before Beren and Lúthien can arrive. The wolf has crossed a great distance in a frenzy, driven onwards by the jewel inside him. His jaws are stained, his fur is clotted with mud, and his eyes burn with a madness that no living creature can endure for long. When he enters the guarded land, the boundary itself seems to shudder beneath his passage. The scent of him spreads through the trees, and the beasts of Doriath flee into deeper shadows. Birds rise suddenly from the branches, beating their wings against the dimness. The watchmen of Thingol hear the disturbance and carry word towards the king. Thingol understands that Carcharoth has entered Doriath, and he knows that the wolf carries the Silmaril within his body. The king organizes the hunting of the wolf, gathering the strongest and most experienced companions available. Beren takes part in the hunt, although his arm is not healed, and his lost hand has earned him the name Urchamion. Lúthien remains near him, while Thingol leads the company through the forest. Beleg comes with them, silent and watchful, carrying his bow beneath the trees. Mablung walks at the king's side, holding his spear and studying the marks left by Carcharoth's passage. Huan follows the hunters, the great hound whose loyalty has endured through danger, distance, and grief. Together, Beren, Thingol, Beleg, Mablung, and Huan enter the wild places of Doriath. The forest closes around you with a patience older than any kingdom. Leaves cling to the branches in dark layers, heavy with water from the night. Mist drifts between the trunks and gathers around the roots, where small streams run beneath carpets of moss. The smell of wet fur and crushed leaves lies strongly upon the air. Carcharoth has passed through the undergrowth, leaving torn stems, broken fern, and deep prints filled with rain. You hear the faint tapping of water falling from one leaf to another. Beleg moves ahead with his bow ready, and Mablung lowers his head to examine the ground. The hush is not complete, because the forest continues its slow work around you. A branch bends somewhere unseen, and a fox slips across a patch of grey earth. Beyond the trees, the river speaks, subdued by distance and mist. Beren's breathing is measured, though pain moves through his shoulder with every step. Lúthien watches him carefully, and a hand rests near his uninjured arm. Thingol does not speak often as the hunters advance. His thought is fixed upon the jewel, the oath, and the impossible bride price that Beren had promised. The king had demanded a Silmaril from the Iron Crown of Morgoth, believing that no mortal could fulfill such a condition. Now the impossible jewel is carried through his kingdom by a maddened wolf. Thingol's concern is not only for the treasure. Carcharoth threatens Doriath itself, and the creature must be stopped before his frenzy reaches the heart of the land. The hunters follow his path through the forest, moving beneath branches that scrape softly against their shoulders. The smell of wet fur becomes stronger as the trail descends towards a river crossing. Crushed leaves cling to your boots, and dark water trembles around the exposed roots of ancient trees. The first pale light of morning appears behind the mist. It does not brighten the forest so much as reveal its many shades of grey. Beren Shamian walks close to Huan, and the great hound turns his head towards him. For a moment, the two companions regard one another without speech. Beren has lost a hand, and Huan has already endured wounds that would have brought down lesser creatures. Yet both remain upon the trail. The sound of Carcharoth comes from beyond the river. You hear branches breaking, stones rolling, and a deep growl passing through the trees like distant thunder. Thingol raises his hand, and the hunters stop. Beleg takes position among the trunks. Mablung moves towards the bank. Huan lowers his body, gathering himself in silence. Beren stands beside him, holding what remains of his broken knife in the hand that remains. The wolf emerges through the mist with the Silmaril still burning inside him. Light shines faintly through the darkened flesh of his belly, appearing and disappearing beneath the movement of his body. His mouth opens, and his breath comes out in harsh, broken bursts. The jewel has become a furnace within him, and the pain has driven every thought from his mind. Carcharoth sees the hunters and springs towards them. Arrows pass through the mist. One strikes his shoulder, another tears the fur along his flank, and a third disappears into the wet ground beside him. The wolf does not slow. Huan meets him in the open space beside the river. The impact throws water into the air, and the two great creatures roll among the stones. Their snarls echo beneath the trees. Beren moves forward with them, while Thingol, Beleg, and Mablung close around the struggle. The wolf's claws rake Huan's side. Huan's jaws find Carcharoth's throat, and for a moment the mad creature is held. Then Carcharoth twists with terrible force, breaking free beneath the hound's weight. The mist swirls over the riverbank as the combat continues. Water runs around your ankles, cold and clear, carrying leaves downstream. The stones beneath you are smooth from years of flowing currents. Wet fur gives off a heavy animal smell, mixed with mud, blood, and the bitter scent of crushed plants. Branches tremble above the hunters as the struggle moves beneath them. Huan's breath comes in deep, strained sounds, while Carcharoth makes a raw noise that seems less like a growl than a cry of pain. The Silmaril burns within the wolf, and its light shines through the darkness of his body. That white brilliance is unlike the light of the morning. It has no warmth, yet it touches every surface with a clear and solemn radiance. A wet stone gleams beside your foot. The river flashes beneath the mist. Even the blood upon Huan's fur catches the jewel's light for an instant. The hound rises again, wounded but unwavering. Beren sees the moment when Carcharoth turns towards him. He knows that the wolf must be stopped, and he steps into the danger beside Huan. The last contest begins with no room for retreat. Carcharoth rushes at Beren, and Huan leaps between them. The wolf's jaws close upon Huan, while Beren strikes with the broken knife. The blade enters beneath Carcharoth's ribs. Huan holds the wolf long enough for Beren's blow to reach the heart. Carcharoth convulses, and the force of his movement carries both animals into the shallow river. The water darkens around them. Beren falls beside the stones, his remaining hand pressed against the earth. Thingol reaches him, while Beleg and Mablung draw back from the dying creatures. Carcharoth lies still at last. The great wolf is dead, and the Silmaril has ceased its restless movement within him. Huan remains alive for only a little longer. You see his head resting upon the wet ground, his eyes turned towards Beren and Lúthien. The hound has completed his final service to them. His life has been spent in guarding their path, and now the last danger has passed. Lúthien kneels beside Huan, placing her hand upon his neck. His breathing grows quieter as the light changes among the trees. Huan dies beside the river, having completed his final service to Beren and Lúthien. The forest receives his passing without disturbance. Water continues beneath the reeds, and the mist moves slowly from the river towards the open land. A small bird begins to sing somewhere above the bank. Its notes are clear but distant, separated by long intervals of silence. Beren bends over Carcharoth's body, while Thingol stands beside him. The recovery of the Silmaril is no simple task. The jewel lies within the wolf's belly, and the wound made by Beren's knife has closed around the darkness of the creature's flesh. Mablung brings a sword, and Beleg holds back the branches that obscure the clearing. Beren opens the belly of Carcharoth. His movements are steady despite the weakness in his arm. At last, the Silmaril is recovered from Carcharoth's belly. It rests in Beren's hand with a white brilliance that fills the darkened forest clearing. No chamber has walls around it, yet the trees seem to become a vaulted room. The brilliance of the Silmaril gathers upon every wet leaf. The shadows retreat beneath the trunks, and the mist shines like fine silver cloth. Beren holds the jewel carefully, feeling no heat upon his skin. The light is pure, steady, and almost impossibly calm after the violence that has surrounded it. Water glimmers in the folds of the riverbank. The pale morning has arrived, but the Silmaril remains brighter than the sky. A drop of rain slides from a branch and falls through the light. For an instant, it appears to be a small, clear star. The smell of crushed leaves remains beneath the radiance. Huan's fur is dark beside the river, and the hound's stillness gives the clearing a solemn quiet. Lúthien's hair catches the white light along its edges. Beren turns towards Thingol, carrying the recovered jewel. The king looks upon the Silmaril and understands that Beren has fulfilled the impossible bride price. The broken weapon cannot hold the jewel, so Beren presents it openly in his hand. Thingol sees him standing before him, one-handed, wounded, and holding the treasure demanded from Morgoth's crown. The king's pride and anger cannot remain unchanged. The request had been meant to separate Beren from Lúthien. It had become a journey into Angband, a theft from the Iron Crown, and a hunt through Doriath. The impossible demand has become a proof of courage, loyalty, and love. Thingol accepts that Beren has fulfilled the bride price. He no longer refuses the mortal who has returned from the darkness. The forest is quiet after the hunt. Mist hangs in long ribbons over the rivers of Osiriand, and the first sunlight touches the upper branches. The ground is marked by footprints, blood, broken stems, and the deep impressions left by Carcharoth's paws. The Silmaril rests safely in Beren's possession, bright against the darkness of his clothing. Lúthien stands near him, her face tired but peaceful. Thingol looks from the jewel to his daughter, and then towards Beren and Lúthien. Nothing in the clearing resembles a royal court. There are no banners, no musicians, and no polished floor beneath their feet. Only wet leaves surround them, and the river carries the morning downstream. Nevertheless, the decision made beside the trees changes the history of many lands. Thingol eventually allows Beren and Lúthien to marry. Their wedding follows the long hardship of the quest, and the old opposition between king and mortal softens into acceptance. You leave the forest with them as the paths descend towards the green country. Beren and Lúthien travel south to Tol Galen, an island of grass and trees within the land of Osiriand. There they live together beyond the walls of Doriath, sheltered by the rivers and the quiet people of the green land. Tol Galen rests among broad waters, where the streams divide around willow banks and low islands. Birdsong moves over the meadows from morning until late afternoon. Long grass brushes against your knees as you walk beneath the open sky. The scent of river water mingles with flowering plants, damp bark, and sun-warmed earth. At dawn, mist gathers over the rivers of Osiriand, and the island appears to float within a pale sea. By midday, the mist has lifted, leaving beads of moisture upon the grasses. Butterflies pass through the reeds. Small fish move beneath the clear surface of the channels. Beren and Lúthien build a life upon Tol Galen that is simple beside the grandeur of their earlier deeds. Their days are measured by seasons rather than battles. Beren walks beneath the trees, his missing hand a quiet reminder of Angband and the name Lúthien. Lúthien sings beside the river, and the birds answer from the long grass. The Silmaril is no longer hidden within a wounded beast. Its fate, however, continues beyond the island. The jewel has passed from Morgoth to Beren, and from Beren into the wider history of Middle-earth. In time, Beren and Lúthien have a son. His name is Dior Elachil. He grows among the green lands of Osiriand, carrying the inheritance of both mortal and immortal blood. Dior becomes a bridge between generations that would otherwise stand far apart. Through him, the story of Tol Galen moves onwards into the histories of Doriath, the Havens, and the sea. The afternoon air is warm above the meadows. Long grass bends beneath a passing breeze, recovering slowly after each movement. You hear larks high overhead, although the birds themselves remain hidden in the blue distance. Willows trail their branches into the rivers, and the water slips around them with a soft, continuous sound. On Tol Galen, the names of Beren and Lúthien seem to belong naturally to the landscape. Their voices mingle with birdsong. Their footsteps disappear beneath the grass. The island keeps no grand monument, yet the memory of their life settles into the soil and water. Evening arrives gently over Osiriand. Mist returns to the channels, and the trees become dark shapes along the banks. Lúthien's song grows quieter as the light fades. Beren sits near her, watching the first stars appear. The years pass through Tol Galen, bringing changes that no love can prevent. Beren and Lúthien eventually die after the later violence that reaches their home. Beren is slain while defending Lúthien, and Lúthien follows him in grief beyond the borders of Middle-earth. Their deaths separate the lovers once more. The island remains beneath the sky, holding the memory of their marriage and the quiet life they made together. Night settles over the rivers of Osiriand. Reeds move against one another along the water. The wet earth gives back the day's warmth slowly, while the grass darkens beneath a sky full of distant stars. You stand among the trees of Tol Galen, listening to the low movement of the rivers. Birdsong has ended, but small night creatures stir beneath the leaves. A faint wind crosses the island, carrying the scent of willow, moss, and water. The silence is not empty. It contains the spaces between old songs, the pauses within remembered names, and the patient breathing of the land. Far from Tol Galen, Lúthien comes to the halls of Mandos. The halls lie beyond the world, where the dead gather under the keeping of Mandos, the Vala who judges the dead. There, the sounds of Middle-earth cannot be heard in the ordinary manner. No river runs beneath the floor, and no wind passes through the trees. Yet the quiet is filled with music. You walk through a hall beyond the world, where music carries farther than footsteps. The walls seem to recede into darkness, while pale sound moves across the great spaces. Each note travels without haste. It rises from unseen places and remains suspended after the singer has fallen silent. The hall is neither cold nor warm. Its stillness has no weather, yet it holds a sense of distance greater than any earthly night. Lúthien stands before Mandos, carrying the grief of Beren's death. She does not accept the separation imposed by mortality. Her sorrow becomes a song, and the song reaches Mandos in the quiet hall. Lúthien pleads for Beren before Mandos, the Vala who judges the dead. Her request is unlike any ordinary appeal. She asks that the two lives divided by death might be joined again. Mandos hears her song, and its power moves beyond the words themselves. The music carries the memory of Doriath, the darkness beneath Angband, the riverbank where Huan died, and the green grass of Tol Galen. You hear no footsteps approaching, but the distant hall seems to draw closer around her. The silence after Lúthien's song is deep enough to contain an entire age. Mandos does not answer quickly. The fate of the Eldar and the fate of mortals are not the same. Lúthien is of the immortal people, while Beren belongs to the race of men. Their first life together ended beneath the law of mortality, and no ordinary power can reverse that ending. Still, Lúthien's grief is joined to her love. She does not ask to live again without Beren. She chooses the fate that belongs to him. The halls beyond the world remain quiet as Mandos considers her plea. No fire burns in the chamber, yet a gentle brightness lies along the floor. Music passes through the darkness, sometimes near, sometimes distant beyond measure. You sense the movement of sound more than its source. It resembles wind across high grass, although no grass grows there. It resembles water beneath a bridge, although no river can be seen. Lúthien waits within that music. Her choice is not made from ignorance of death. She has known the loss of her mother, the grief of Thingol, the danger of Angband, and the wounds carried by Beren at Chamian. She chooses mortality with full knowledge of what it will mean. At last, Mandos grants Lúthien's request. He allows Beren and Lúthien to return to Middle-earth. Lúthien becomes mortal, sharing Beren's mortal fate and accepting that their second life will also end. The gift is not a restoration of their former existence. It is a new beginning beneath the changing sky. They return together, carrying no Silmaril in their hands and no royal claim upon the lands they have left. Their second life is quieter than the first. They return to Tol Galen, where the rivers of Osiriand divide around the green island. The world receives them without ceremony. Grass grows beside their path, and birdsong rises from the willows. The mist over the rivers of Osiriand appears once more at dawn, covering the low banks in silver. Beren and Lúthien walk through it together. Their bodies now belong to mortality, and the knowledge of this ending gives tenderness to every ordinary hour. Lúthien's song is softer than before. Beren's steps are slower. The island holds them for a little while longer. The morning light settles on Tol Galen in broad, quiet bands. Long grass bends away from the river, then lifts again as the breeze passes. A thrush sings from a hidden branch. The sound is neither grand nor sorrowful, but it carries clearly through the open air. Dew remains upon the leaves. Mist draws apart over the water. Beyond the island, the hills of Osiriand lie blue beneath the early sun. The returned lovers move among familiar trees, and the land seems to recognize them. Their son Doriath inherits the memory of their love. He carries within his life the meeting of two peoples, the Eldar and men, joined through Beren and Lúthien. Dior becomes the father of Elwing. Through Elwing, the Silmaril enters another passage of the world's history. Elwing later carries the Silmaril to the Havens, where its light becomes bound to the fate of Eärendil. Eärendil bears that light into the heavens, and the jewel becomes part of a story far larger than the first quest in Doriath. The descendants of Beren and Lúthien link the Silmaril to Elwing, Eärendil, and the later history of the world. The jewel passes through loss, war, exile, and hope. Its radiance remains associated with those who carry it across darkness. The white brilliance that once shone in the forest eventually belongs to the sky above Middle-earth. Night returns to Tol Galen. The rivers darken beneath the stars, and mist gathers in long, pale bands over the water. Long grass whispers around the island. A bird calls from the bank, and another answers beyond the channel. The air smells of wet earth and crushed leaves, though no hunter has passed this way for many years. The quiet land seems to remember the weight of Huan's body beside the river. It remembers the footsteps of Beren and Lúthien. It remembers Lúthien's singing beneath the trees. The story of Beren and Lúthien has often been understood as a tale of impossible courage, yet its deepest movement is quieter. A demand intended to prevent a marriage becomes the path towards it. A jewel carried by a wolf becomes an inheritance for distant descendants. A death that seems final becomes a passage into another life. Love does not remove sorrow from the tale. It gives sorrow a shape that can be carried. Beren loses his hand and receives the name Lúthien. Huan gives his life after completing his final service. Carcharoth dies with the Silmaril within him, and the jewel returns to the hands of those who seek to protect it. Thingol loses the certainty of his refusal and accepts the bond between his daughter and the mortal who came from beyond his borders. Lúthien loses immortality and chooses the same mortal road as Beren. The names remain connected across generations. Beren and Lúthien, Tol Galen and Osiriand, Doriath, Elwing and Eärendil. Each name opens into another part of the world's long memory. The stars shine above the rivers of Osiriand. Mist moves over the water, changing shape around reeds and stones. The wind travels through the long grass with a sound like distant breathing. No fire burns upon the island, yet the sky holds countless points of light. Some seem cold and remote. Others tremble above the dark hills. The river carries their reflections away, breaking them against the current. You remain among the quiet grasses, while the memory of the lovers settles into the night. In later years, the story comes close to the life of the one who wrote it. Tolkien associated Beren and Lúthien personally with himself and his wife, Edith Tolkien. The connection was not merely an ornament added to the tale. It belonged to the way Tolkien understood love, loss, marriage, endurance, and the hope of reunion. The names Beren and Lúthien appear on Tolkien's and Edith Tolkien's shared gravestone in Oxford. The stone rests in an ordinary cemetery, beneath the changing weather of the English seasons. There, the names of the fictional lovers stand beside those of the two people whose lives inspired them. The final memory is not of Angband, or of the wolf, or of the crown. It is of two names joined together. Rain falls softly over the gravestone in Oxford. Moss darkens the edges of the stone, and small leaves gather near its base. The air carries the smell of wet grass and earth. Clouds move slowly above the cemetery, revealing brief spaces of pale sky. No great hall surrounds the names. No Silmaril shines upon the letters. Still, the quiet inscription carries a light of its own, held in memory rather than crystal. Beyond the world, Mandos keeps his halls. Music carries farther than footsteps through the shadowed spaces. Upon Tol Galen, birdsong once moved above the long grass. Across the rivers of Osiriand, mist rose and fell. In the northern darkness, the Silmaril passed from hand to hand, from wound to wound, and from one age into another. The story closes without erasing the cost of its happiness. Beren and Lúthien die again, because Lúthien has chosen Beren's mortal fate. Their second life does not grant endless escape from sorrow. It grants them time together and the dignity of sharing the same ending. Their love becomes part of the world through Dior, Elwing, and Rendil. The jewel's light continues beyond their graves. The white radiance travels into the later history of the world, where it remains connected to hope against darkness. You stand once more beside a river in Osiriand. Mist rests upon the water, and the banks are hidden beneath a silver veil. The smell of wet leaves rises from the ground. Somewhere among the willows, a bird begins its morning song. Long grass leans beneath the gentle air. The light grows slowly, touching the river first, and then the distant trees. Beren's name remains in the quiet. Lúthien's name remains with it. The island of Tol Galen lies green beneath the opening sky, and the old tale continues beyond sight through the lives of their descendants. The music of the world becomes softer as the morning advances. The river carries the mist away. The grasses straighten. The birdsong moves farther across the fields. In a quiet hall beyond the world, music still carries farther than footsteps. In Oxford, two names rest together beneath rain and seasons. In the histories of Middle-earth, the Silmaril remains bound to Beren and Lúthien. And in the green land of Osiriand, where the rivers divide around Tol Galen, their shared memory lies peacefully beneath the grass.